Sports and Lifestyle live NBA draft special here on Elevation 5280 Sports. And we'll have Daniel joining us. You can hear him every Thursday. He just got done with his podcast. The answer is 42. The San Antonio Spurs are on the clock. We will try to get you the audio live from the draft in Adam Silver. Everyone predicting that the Spurs are going to pick Victor Wembanyama, played in France last season, and we will also be discussing in between drafts and stuff like that. We will be discussing the crazy trades that went down this week. All teams seemingly trying to catch up with the Denver Nuggets as they are crowned champions this season. Once again, the Spurs are on the clock. I think everyone knows who they are going to pick. They have 5 minutes. Maybe they'll spend the 5 minutes on this pick. Maybe not. We will see. But we will be getting the audio for you. Daniel's set to join me soon. So we will get that going for you. And mind me looking at my phone as we will be simultaneously posting the draft picks on our Facebook pages as well. So apologize for that in advance. So once Daniel gets here it'll be a little bit easier for me to multitask here, as we will have all the picks for you on our socials as well. Speaking of socials, don't forget to like the Facebook page at 5280 Sports and Lifestyle, like the Twitter at 5280 Sports Radio, Instagram Elevation 5280 Radio, and on YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel as well. It is at 5280 Sports Radio. So it's pretty similar to the Twitter. As Spurs are on the clock. Really quickly, these trades that went down this week. Bradley Beal goes to the Washington Wizards, and he was exchanged for, well, Chris Paul was included in that deal. And Chris Paul, I don't even think he had a cup of coffee with the Washington Wizards. I think he just automatically was just like, peace, I'm out. And he was actually acquired by the Golden State Warriors today. That happened today. So Warriors, Memphis got a good part of that trade. Marcus Smart, the defensive player of the year a couple of seasons ago, he goes to Memphis. And Kristaps Porzingis goes to the Boston Celtics. Celtics have tried multiple times to acquire Porzingis yesterday, and they were finally able to get it done. Malcolm Brogdon, the reigning sixth man of the year, was set to join the LA Clippers, but they are nervous of that injury that he suffered. Really didn't play the entire Eastern Conference Finals, so they backed out, and everyone just kind of backed out. The Wizards and the Clippers were also part of that. Obviously, the Boston Celtics getting Kristaps Porzingis. Now, if you think about it, remember when Kristaps was drafted to the New York Knicks, everyone called him the unicorn, and has since bounced around. He is now on his fourth team, as he had stints in Dallas and now Washington, and now he will be on the Boston Celtics, who were unable to get it done in Game 7 against the Miami Heat. So once again, we're just waiting for the Spurs, as they are showing Victor on the screen. The pick is in, so let's get over to Adam Silver, and I guess kind of delaying the inevitable. They're still showing JJ Redick, who was a component, by the way, of the Denver Nuggets basically all season long, all postseason long. So we will wait. Daniel's about to join us as well. So again, excuse and mind and bear with the multitasking. You can probably see the brightness on my face as I flip through screens, look down at my phone. So once again, bear with me with that, and it'll be a little bit easier once Daniel joins. So we will be able to do that as he is logged in and ready to go right now. Let me try to bring him in here. There is Daniel. Daniel, how are you doing this evening?
I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Not too bad. Now I can finally turn down this music so it wasn't just all me talking there. So the pick is in, and I'm assuming, everyone's assuming, that Victor Wembanyama is going to be the first pick by the San Antonio Spurs. And I already told the audience, Daniel, to mind me simultaneously multitasking as I'm going to be posting on our socials as well as everything else. So as we wait for Adam Silver to join the stage, here he is. Let's go live to Adam Silver.
Boom.
Well, there it is, Daniel. The first pick of the 2023 NBA draft is Victor Wembanyama, and I don't know why it even took 5 minutes for the Spurs to make this pick, but he was the presumptuous number one pick, and they got their guy, which means now Greg Popovich thought about retiring. Now he's probably going to coach until he no longer can breathe. Daniel,
Right.
what do you make of this pick?
I mean, it's what we all expected. My only thing is like what I think a lot of people have talked about is like, can he live up to the hype? And to me, I don't see how any human can live up to the hype this poor kid has been drummed up. I do believe he's going to be a very good NBA player, but I just don't see how you live up to that type of hype of being like he's got to be the GOAT. He's 7'5" and he's got range and all of those things. But I mean, how do you not take that guy at number one? Really, when you look at his skill set, you look at his size. Maybe he's a little skinny. Maybe you want him to do one or two other things that he might not do right now. But a lot of it's stuff that he can work on. It's stuff that he can get better at. He's still young. He can get bigger. All those things that people try to knock him for, I don't see as anything that is a knock. So like you said, why did it take them 5 minutes? They should have been at the podium ready as soon as the opening bell was sounded.
Right, and that was crazy. Maybe the Spurs are just toying with people like Popovich usually likes to do. As once again, Victor, the only knock I have on Victor, yeah, he can shoot for a pretty tall man, but he's got no beef on him. Do you think that he's going to be kind of knocked around in the post?
I do believe he can, but I think with his length and athleticism, he can make up for that in the early going. But again, he's still a kid. He's a teenager. He's eventually just naturally he's going to get bulk. We're not going to see him do a Dwight Howard. I think his agents have already kind of squashed that, thinking that he's just going to go out and drink a bunch of protein shakes and pack on as many pounds as possible because he's afraid of injury. And his agents have worked with guys like Rudy Gobert in the past who just let themselves naturally get bigger and didn't try to force it. And I think we've seen it across all sports. I mean, people have talked about it just recently with Russell Wilson, what happened to Von Miller back when he tore his ACL the first time. Putting on too much weight can be a detriment, especially when you're a big guy like that. He's already got so much pressure on all of those joints. I don't think you want to force it, but I guess to sum it up and answer your question more succinctly is, yes, I think he will be bodied, but I think he'll find a way around it. And just naturally through him growing, that part of his game will get better and he'll get less bullied as he gets older and puts on some more weight naturally.
Yeah, and that's what you hope that the Spurs will try to do. Like you said, I don't think there's a protein shake that can really beef them up in time. But hit the gym, hit the weight room, and you'll be all right. As you know, they had a pretty muscular center back in their heyday, Daniel, and David Robinson. And yes. I don't know if the Navy helped with him getting in shape quicker, but we will see what happens to Victor Wembanyama once again. Played for the Metropolitans last season in France, and he was well. Let's just hope his basketball game is better than him throwing out the first pitch.
I've always thought it's funny that people just assume because you're a good athlete in one sport, you're a good athlete in every sport, but it's not typically the case. Shooting a basketball is a completely different mechanic than throwing out a baseball. And when you got those types of levers, like I don't think you wanted him to have an on-spot fastball. Is at 7'5". I mean, we all saw what Randy Johnson was able to do under 7 foot. If he could really throw a baseball at that height with that kind of a stretch and reach, I don't think you want to be the catcher catching that memorial first pitch. Oh, did I lose you? I don't hear you anymore.
I guess it would help if I turned the mute button off. It would. as we wait for the Hornets. The Hornets are on the clock right now. Yeah, I'm assuming there's a lot of pressure on some of these guys who throw out first pitches and stuff like that, who are like, man, people are expecting me to dominate in the basketball world. And then not only throwing out the first pitch, Daniel, but to do it at Yankee Stadium, one of the, more famous, hyped, I guess, type of places to throw out a first pitch. Maybe not like it used to be in old Yankee Stadium, but definitely, I'm sure there was a little bit of pressure on him. And so we'll see what happens with Victor. Definitely chose the right career path in basketball.
Yes.
As we wait,
Yankee Stadium. Sorry, it's a little bit of a tangent, but is Yankee Stadium not the site of some of the worst first pitches ever? Like, if you think about the worst first pitch, you got Wembanyama, you got 50 Cent. I mean, like, the list goes on of people that have been terrible throwing out the first pitch in Yankee Stadium.
Right. It's been crazy. And so Victor just add to the list of that. Now, as we look at the Spurs lineup, Daniel, it's going to be interesting who they throw out there. And, the Spurs were basically tanking, for lack of a better term, for Victor, as I think it even made a hashtag, tank for Victor. So they got their guy. I mean, is this do you expect a quick turnaround window for the Spurs, or is this kind of going to be years in the making?
It's going to take a couple of seasons. I think that this, like you said, it saved Popovich from retiring, but I think it's still going to take another couple of seasons because this is a team game. I know so many people of this era and generation, they're all about the And One mixtape tour that doesn't even exist anymore for a reason. It's the reason they never took over the NBA, because team basketball matters and it's the best type of basketball. The Nuggets just proved that with their championship that we just got to enjoy here in Denver. So they're not one guy away. They are several pieces away. He's obviously a big piece, both literally and figuratively, but he is not the only piece that they need.
So we'll see. Like you said, Popovich is extended his stay a little bit in the National Basketball Association, as we are still waiting for the Hornets. Their pick is in. Let's go over to Adam Silver.
Oh, let's see.
Kind of heard mixed reviews for Brandon Miller, the forward out of Alabama, Daniel. A lot of people were perhaps expecting Scoot, the old Scooter, to go at number 2. But the Hornets, I mean, they have 3 picks in the first round, but obviously Scoot's not going to be there later on in this draft as they get, well, I don't know if it's their guy necessarily, but it was their guy tonight, Brandon Miller out of Alabama.
Yeah, that one was a little bit shocking. I was just talking about him in the Answers 42 podcast right before this, that he's either one of the most brilliant prospects or one of the dumbest, for the way that he just absolutely unloaded on Michael Jordan, the guy that still technically owns the team. But talking about him airballing, I mean, just talking major crap the whole time that he was there for the workout, and then goes out and says that his GOAT is Paul George when asked if Michael Jordan was the GOAT. Like, I don't know if that's just like some genius reverse psychology that he worked on this man, or he's just that good that they were able to overlook all of that. But to me, I mean, he looks like a lottery pick. He has the game on both ends of the court. He can score at multiple levels. So, I mean, I definitely get why they want him there. But to me, it kind of shocks me in the fact of just everything that's went off in the media with him over the last couple of weeks, and they still went out there and picked him up with number 2. I honestly thought this would be where we saw the first trade. I thought that they would get out of this and you would see somebody move up, like maybe a Portland trading off of Dame Lillard, et cetera, to get moved up there and whatnot.
Yeah, and a lot of talk has been made of Damian Lillard and his kind of status with the Portland Trailblazers. And, well, I don't know if they're going to stand pat with him or, again, see a draft night trade, as we are now waiting for the Portland Trailblazers, who have the number 3 pick. A lot have been made about that number 3 pick, packaging it with a trade for Dame, maybe packaging those two elements together as, Well, there was a couple of crazy trades. One went down today. One went down last night. One went down earlier in the week. Let's start with the earlier one, Dan, and that was, well, Phoenix. Obviously, the Nuggets are causing a. Basically, the Nuggets broke the NBA, as we saw.
Yeah.
We saw Monty get fired in Phoenix, and then we see them trade even more of their bench. Chris Paul gets shipped out. Chris Paul, I don't even think he had time for a cup of coffee in Washington. So you can't say, I don't even think he's there for 48 hours. And he gets shipped off to Golden State today. We're going to cover that in a second. But what do you make of Phoenix grabbing Bradley Beal? Because the way I look at it, DeAndre Ayton, who I think is still in witness protection program after what Jokic did to him, but he should make it back by the regular season. But what do you make of Bradley Beal now on the Suns?
I mean, I just see them trading an older piece for a younger piece. I see Bradley Beal as a younger, slightly more athletic, slightly better scoring version of CP3. I just kind of see them switching out one piece for another. Just one's younger than the other one. Bradley Beal, he has his warts, but I do think he's a good leader. I think he's really good at what they ask him to do, and I think he's going to be asked to do less in Phoenix with KD and Ayton and all those guys there, and Booker. So I think he might actually be a little bit better with a little bit less scoring than what he did in Washington with being the guy essentially. So it's a good move for Phoenix, but for me, it doesn't move the needle enough to make them better than the Nuggets. I just don't see him as being the missing piece. How does he stop Jokic? Like you just said, Ayton couldn't stop Jokic. So how is Bradley Beal the answer to Jokic? Because that's the answer everybody has to have in the league right now. It's not having a better point guard or having a better small forward or whatever than the Nuggets. It's having a better player than Jokic, or at least a guy that can hold Jokic down to where you can win the game. And Bradley Beal's not that answer.
No. And like I said, DeAndre Ayton, who was struggling, is even a strong word for Ayton in the Western Conference semifinals. As again, I don't know how he's even still walking at this point. Took himself out of a lot of plays. They just added another shooter, Daniel, and then they got rid of Landry Shamet, who was actually basically the only one on Phoenix who was kind of making Jamal Murray struggle a little bit.
Facts. I'm 100% there with you. Like, they went and got the answer to a question nobody asked. That's the best way that I can put it. Like, they didn't need to make that move. I think CP3 would be just as good on that team as what Bradley Beal will bring. Again, the only difference between the two guys is really age at this point and a little bit of athleticism, and most of it's because of that age. So, again, if you're not answering the question that is how do you stop Jokic, then you're not answering the right question.
Right. So as we still await for the Portland Trailblazers to make the third pick overall in the NBA draft, here comes Adam Silver. Let's get over to the commissioner. Well, that was supposed to be the presumed pick for the Charlotte Hornets, so he fell right into the lap of the Portland Trailblazers. I guess my first initial question, Daniel, is Dame happy now with a draft like Scoot Henderson?
I mean, that's a hard question to answer because I don't think he's looking for more young talent. He's looking for his counterpart. He's looking for that other superstar. Could Scoot Henderson be that guy? Possibly. But again, this is a draft prospect. As much as ballyhooed as him and Wembanyama and all these guys are, you never really know what you get until they get on the court with other grown men. And could he be that superstar that Dame's been looking for? It's possible, but there's also a great possibility that it's going to take him a year or 2 years or even more to get to that point. So if I was Dame and I was looking at this, I'd be like, okay, it's a good pick, but you should be making a good pick in the top 5 of the NBA draft. That's why you're in the top 5, is because you're supposed to get those can't miss prospects. So where's my other guy that's going to help me right now? Not in a couple months, not in a couple years. Who's going to help me right now? And this doesn't answer that question. So I'm not going to be happy if I'm Dame. So I'm going to say at this point, I don't think this makes him happy. He's going to need more than this.
Do you see Damian Lillard getting drafted, or excuse me, getting traded tonight? Do you see that as a possibility? Because this was kind of the one bargaining chip that Portland had, was this number 3 pick as we await the Houston Rockets now. As Rockets, Jazz, Trailblazers, and Hornets, one of a few teams who have 2+ picks in this first round alone. As don't forget, the Nuggets traded up into the first round as well yesterday with the trade with the Pacers. So they'll pick 28th tonight as we wait that pick, obviously. But now, I mean, for Portland, they don't. Like I said, I think they kind of just got rid of their bargaining chip. But they do have a pick later in this round, so I mean, they could still maybe package that. You might not get much in return with a later first round, but it is a first round pick. Do you see that a possibility with some kind of package?
I mean, there is a possibility they could still trade Scoot. That again, they could package that later round and maybe a couple of future first rounders to go out and get a guy. And maybe that's their idea. Like they didn't get the package that they wanted for the number 2 pick. People weren't sure if they was going to get Scoot. So now he fell in their lap. Maybe that gives them an extra trade chip. That's all a possibility. But to me, the way everything's looking is I see it more likely that Dame Lillard is shipped out of Portland and they pick up another pick here in the first round or something of that nature than it is them trading a Scoot or their other first round pick. I think this team's really committed to building something from the draft. I think this just like every other league. It's a copycat league. Everybody's seen what Denver's been able to do. So I think they're going to build it through the draft. And if anybody gets moved, it's going to be Dame getting shipped out and then picking up some more first rounders either this year, next year, or in the future.
Yeah. And do you like the kind of, I mean, I've always been a fan of like developmental leagues. Obviously, baseball, it goes from AAA all the way down to single A. Hockey, there's so many freaking leagues that it's almost hard to keep track of. I couldn't even, besides the Eagles, I mean, there's so many, just so many.
That's it.
Yeah. And the Canada has probably 100+ leagues by themselves. So
right.
And when the NBA kind of adopted the G League and finally brought them in, I guess, into the fold, they've always kind of been the, I guess, for lack of a better term, throwing up air quotes, minor league division of the NBA. Do you like the fact that now NBA teams can draft players out of the G League now? Because, you're able to kind of have two-way contracts, all that mess. We've seen it with the Nuggets affiliate, especially being located in Denver. We've seen that with the Grand Rapids Gold. But do you like the process now that you can draft a guy who's been playing in the G League? Do you like that process now?
I like it with the fact that they've allowed these kids to go from high school into the G League. There's no more of the forcing them into college thing. I always hated that one and done thing. Like, you're really going to convince a kid to stay at a school for many years simply because he went there for one season, and he's going to forego all the millions of dollars. Obviously now the NIL deals and all that kind of changes that landscape, but the point still remains. Like, are you going to choose to stay at school and have to do classes and all of that on a daily plus basketball, or are you going to go get your millions right now, go and play basketball at the highest level and prove that you are as good as you think you are? You're going to always pick, as a competitor, you're going to pick the latter. So the fact of them sitting there forcing people into one and done was always an asinine thing to me. If the kid wants to go to college, let him go to college. But if he doesn't, find another path. The fact that they finally went and used the G League as that path, that's what makes me like it and want to see it continue in perpetuity. This is something that I think has been good for the league. It's been good giving players an alternate route to the league than just forcing them onto a college campus just simply because you were buddies with the college coach and you wanted to make them out there. If you're going to do it like the NFL where they're forced in there for 3 years. At least then they'll be forced to get that degree and not just waste a year on a college campus like a guy like Peyton Watson or them did at UCLA and that. So yes, I'm all for it and I want to see it keep going.
All right, the pick is in for the Houston Rockets as we see their team needs point guard and basically their whole starting five needs a reboot. But it is full of, I want to say, talented young players. Kenyon Martin's son is on that team. They're the Houston Rockets are, and it's crazy to think about. They're just a few years removed from, kind of making deep runs in the Western Conference playoff bracket. You think back of the James Harden days, the Russell Westbrook days, Chris Paul days, and that wasn't that long ago. And I don't want to say it was a fall from grace, but when you're picking fourth in the NBA draft, something went wrong, and they're just going to keep adding to that. And Rockets, another one of those teams that have so many first-round picks. I think they have 2, maybe 3. I have to look. I have it in front of me, but I can't read at this moment. But they're just collecting these picks. Here's Adam Silver for the Rockets. So Amen Thompson gets selected 4th by the Houston Rockets. And I was saying before we heard Adam Silver there, they're just not only stockpiling picks, but now they're just stockpiling rookie contracts, Daniel, which could be good, not only good for them, player-wise in the future, but financial-wise now for the Houston Rockets.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of people have talked about the Nuggets needing low contracts with rookies and that because of all the guys they have on max deals and stuff. The Rockets are taking it in the opposite direction of using that to potentially go out and, I believe, get some big name free agents, maybe even bring back a guy like a James Harden to try and ease this rebuild a little bit. So seeing them go out there and stack on this roster, which I don't think I'll go to the point where you're like, it's littered with talent, but definitely intrigue. They have a bunch of intriguing players, like you said, like Kmart Jr., guys like that could do something in this league. I think adding a guy like Amen Thomas is a bit of a two-way player, and it has a really good story with him and his brother and the way they grew up together. So I think adding him, both from the PR perspective and on the court, will do some good things for this Rocket team. And if they're able to build around him, I think they could probably be competitive in the next couple of years in the ilk of like what the Cleveland Cavaliers have been able to do since the Kyrie and LeBron left them. I think Houston's on that same type of trajectory.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens with Houston. Again, just loaded with kind of just young talent. So it'll be a few years. It's that's what rebuilds do. That's what that kind of scenario you put yourself in when you get rid of guys like James Harden, who, I guess for all intents and purposes, Daniel, he is probably going back to Philly. That's the last thing I heard. I don't really see a guy who, again, Chris Paul's chasing rings. Can you really say the same for James Harden? Is he really chasing a ring, or is he just? I don't even know. I don't know what his status would be.
Yeah, that's the same thing here. That's why I think it's a possibility he could go back to Houston, because he's just never, and I think it's probably one of his biggest problems when it comes to the playoffs and why he chokes so hard, is he's never really had that mentality of, like, you could see he wants to be the best, that he wants to get to the mountaintop. He seems to just be happy making a bunch of money and playing basketball. Whether he wins or loses, it doesn't really seem to matter to him, as long as he's getting paid and he gets to play basketball. It seems to be the only things he cares about. So I'm with you. I couldn't say that he's out here chasing rings like a CP3. I think he's just out here trying to get the biggest payday possible. And I think that's what gives the Rockets a bit of a leg up, is that they can offer him a lot of money because they don't really have a lot of money tied up anywhere else.
Yeah. And if James Harden were to, I guess, shockingly or suddenly go back to Houston, he's definitely not chasing rings. I think that would be safe to say.
That would seal the deal, and we would not have to worry about whether or not that's true or not. That would definitely prove that the man's just about a paycheck. So yeah, I guess we'll see.
you look at it with his career in the playoffs. Obviously, we just mentioned doesn't have a ring. Him and the supposed MVP of the league, Joel Embiid, they kind of crumbled when it comes to playoff time. And we've seen James Harden do that over and over again, especially if Houston were to bring him on to be that veteran leadership. I kind of compare it to, when guys are drafted in the NFL as a quarterback, kind of like the old grizzled veteran doesn't want to teach anything to the new rookie guy coming in. That's what I see James Harden as.
Yes.
If he goes to Houston,
Yes.
it doesn't seem like he wants anything to do with kind of mentoring the young guys.
Yeah, kind of like you remember here in Denver, Joe Flacco's comment when he came to Denver. That's not my job. Like, he is definitely that type of guy and that type of veteran. He has no interest in paying it forward. He's all about me. And yes, I mean, I call him Bizarro Butler. He is the antithesis of Jimmy Butler. The way that Jimmy shines when the lights are brightest, he absolutely melts and wilts like a soft candle. Like, it's crazy to see the differences between those two players, between regular season and playoffs, and they are the exact opposite of each other.
Yeah, it was kind of, I don't want to say shocking, but a little surprising that Jimmy did kind of fold. And it was kind of, even before the finals in the series with the Nuggets, Daniel, it was kind of crazy to see him kind of be so hesitant in the Eastern Conference Finals against Boston. Anytime like a guy, Robert Williams, was standing in the league or standing in the paint, he didn't want to drive it. He just passed it out. And we kind of said the same thing with the Nuggets, except for maybe game 2, in which he had 28 points. But it was kind of – and I like Jimmy Butler. It's kind of hard to hate the Miami Heat just because, Spoelstra's a good coach. I love Jimmy Buckets. I even have his Bulls jersey, biggest mistake of the Bulls franchise. And it was hard to hate that team, but it was kind of shocking to see him kind of bow out in the playoffs at big moments.
Yeah, and to me, it just kind of looked like an old dude getting old. Like, Jimmy's getting up there, man. And he's used they ride him so hard in the playoffs. That poor guy, man, he hardly gets a break. So I think he just ran out of gas. And then you add in the altitude in Denver. Like, I'm not making excuses for the guy. I'm gonna be wrong. He definitely did not play up to his standards, especially the playoff Jimmy standards. But to me, it just kind of looked like an old guy being old. And he just ran out of gas, especially after that game, like you said, that game 2 where he just kind of gave it his all, and he was able to pull that one out just at the end. And Murray missed the game-winning shot by about a half an inch to get them that victory. So, yeah, it's just, to me, he was just old. That team, outside of really like Bam and Vincent and them, that team was old, and they just kind of ran out of gas after giving it their all just to get there.
That was kind of disappointing if you're a Heat fan. During that, the Detroit Pistons select Usar Thompson. How about this? Twin brothers in back-to-back picks as the Detroit Pistons pick the brother of Amin Thomas, who was just drafted by the Houston Rockets. So his brother goes number 5 overall to the Detroit Pistons. Kind of cool to see. Mm-hmm. And Usar Thompson, 2-time overtime elite and finals MVP. Twin brothers. I don't know if this has ever happened, twin brothers being drafted back-to-back picks. I couldn't even name you twin brothers anyway.
I was even trying, like, right now, I'm trying to think of, like, maybe in another sport. But yeah, not even the McCourty brothers were drafted back-to-back. Like, I can't think of a single twins or group of twins that's ever happened. So I think you're right. That might be the first time. But now that we have OTE here, how is your feeling about Overtime Elite? Like, you touched on it a little bit with the G League and what they're doing. How do you feel about Overtime Elite?
It's just another, and like I said, baseball has all these leagues, hockey has all these minor league teams. It's almost, I mean, unless you're a diehard hoops fan, which I don't really claim to be, but if you pay attention to these leagues, like obviously Detroit, Houston, I mean, you're going to have some good finds. I wouldn't be surprised if these twin brothers were, dare I say, all-stars in maybe 2 to 4 years. And, all-star voting in the NBA is an absolute crapshoot because fans get to vote. Yeah. But, besides that, I feel bad for the latter brother who goes to Detroit. I mean, I was kind of talking about this. If somehow, and I brought Detroit up as an example, Daniel, because we all know that Bruce Brown opted out of his contract, still has a chance to come back to Denver. I was like, or he can go to Detroit where careers go to die and get $18 million there. But I doubt he will because that's who he was drafted by. So I doubt he'll go back to Detroit. But yeah, these leagues are crazy, and you're going to find some good finds in there. And Pistons, again, one of those teams who, unlike the Rockets, I guess, who aren't that far removed from being a playoff team, Pistons, I don't want to say, I mean, that they haven't been relevant in, is it close to 10 years they haven't been relevant?
At least, I would say. Yeah. My only problem with a place like Overtime Elite is that it's given a breath to places like Donda Sports. Like their Overtime Elite was essentially the framework of what they wanted to do with Donda Sports, but it ends up going with these people that don't take the educational side of these kids. Like, again, I know I just said what I said about college, but with these ones, they're grabbing kids that are in high school and stuff. And that's where I start having a problem. But I guess that's maybe a personal thing. I like the fact that they have other options for kids to develop and things of that nature, but I want it done in the right way. Like, don't take a kid out of high school and homeschool them and not actually homeschool them while feeding him the dream of going to the NBA and all this stuff that, again, not all these kids do. They don't get drafted. They don't make it. And then you just sat there and now you have essentially a GED from this off-brand company that's not even a school system. And then you got to go out into the workforce with that. So I guess that's maybe my only one real problem with it. But again, it's like a double-edged sword, I guess. You got to let it happen. And there's going to be some bad actors. You can't, I guess, base your opinions off of the worst of them. But to me, it just kind of gave the opportunity for things like Donda Sports to happen. This was the only thing I really don't like about it.
Yeah, and we all know what Kanye West is about. So if you can stay as far away from that as possible, you should be good. But I catch myself wanting to walk around in big red boots. Here's Adam Silver with the Magic pick. So only the, I guess, second guy drafted out of an actual college, Anthony Black out of Arkansas, and we just a couple picks ago, Brandon Miller out of Alabama. Magic, another one of those teams, Daniel, who have 3 picks in this first round, and we'll see if they use that for any trade bait. Magic are another one of those teams, Daniel, kind of the lower end of the Eastern Conference. They haven't been relevant probably since Shaq was there. But no, they were close when, a prime Dwight Howard, 2009-ish. So has it really been 14 years since the Magic? I want to say 2009 was their last really good team.
I can't think of a counterpoint to that, so I'm gonna have to agree with you.
Yeah, I mean I think that's kind of where they stand.
Yeah, that's insane. I did that whole surprise thing with me earlier when I was talking about Mike Tomlin. I still can't believe he's been a coach of the Steelers for 16 years. That's insane to think. I'm getting old, man. I'm getting old.
Well, I mean, yeah, and even staying in the NBA, Eric Spoelstra has been the coach for the Miami Heat for 14 years, and he's obviously the only guy behind Greg Popovich, who I think is going on 49 years at the helm of the San Antonio Spurs.
I think 4,900 is a better number.
It's close to 4 digits, I want to say. But so Anthony Black last season with Arkansas, almost 13 points a game, 45% from the field, 5 rebounds. The Magic are interesting because they again just kind of lower seed in the Eastern Conference. And remember, not too far removed too, Daniel, from the Eastern Conference, you could have a sub 500 record and still make the playoffs. It actually switched this year. The Eastern Conference, I think the eighth seed obviously was at the Miami Heat, who had the play-in game. I think they were a 500 team making it into the play-in game. And actually, the Western Conference had a losing team make it into the play-in round. I think that was Minnesota. But usually it's the other way around. Eastern Conference, it used to be 5 through 8 and 6 through 8 had losing records, and that the tide has kind of shifted for teams at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. And I think a good comparison for the Magic is the Houston Rockets just stockpiling picks and stockpiling young talent.
Yeah, I agree. And to nail your point home, Miami Heat had a 44-38 record, so they're actually well above 500.
Well above, and they were the 8th seed. Yeah.
Yeah, they were the 8th seed, and actually all in the Western Conference were also over 500, but barely. The Timberwolves were 42-40 at the 8th seed, and Lakers were 43-39 at the 7th seed. But it was close. Definitely, obviously, Eastern was a little bit better, but to me, honestly, I don't really subscribe to the Eastern Conference being better than the Western Conference. I think that the Eastern Conference is softer at the bottom and harder at the top. So the top teams beat up on the bottom teams a little bit more to get that better record. They're at the top. And in the Western Conference, the bottom teams are still, getting theirs against some of the top teams. And that's why you saw Denver being a 1 seed that would have been I believe either the 3 or 4 seed in the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference due to record. I think that was just kind of like a misnomer, and people really just trying to just going off the records and not actually getting deeper into the games and seeing who's what and where. But to me, it's just I still believe the Western Conference is the better conference and will be going forward, especially if the Rockets and the ones of their ilk hit on all these picks that they're stockpiling.
Yeah, so we will see. The Indiana Pacers is now on the clock, and they are they would have had 3 picks in this first round, Daniel. They traded one yesterday to the Denver Nuggets. So the Nuggets will actually have the 28th pick originally stocked for the Pacers. And here's Adam Silver, a quick pick for the Pacers. I'll be honest with you, Daniel. I'm not even going to attempt to say this guy's name. Bilal Koulibaly is as close as I'm going to get. So another guy out of France. So another guy who actually was teammates with Victor Wembanyama on the Mets 92 roster. So another guy coming over from one of these overseas leagues. And again, we're still only at 2 guys out of a college in the States. So crazy to think that all of these, sub leagues are making waves now, as we've only seen an Alabama and an Arkansas guy get picked as another guy from the Mets, once again, Mets 92, teammates of Victor Wembanyama last year in France, as the Pacers get that pick there. And now the Washington Wizards are on the clock. Again, most of these teams, Daniel, that are in this lottery position, the top 10, top 12 teams in the NBA draft, I kind of compared the Magic and the Rockets. I mean, most of these teams are going to be teams that have 2+ picks in the first round. Obviously, we've seen it. We're going to get the Pistons already, the Wizards already with another, or they're making their first pick, but they are one of a couple teams who have a couple picks in this first round. So, like I mentioned, the Jazz have 3 picks in this. Indiana has 2 picks in this first round. It's just crazy to think Magic are coming up here in just a couple picks again. So most of these teams are comparable when it comes to stockpiling these picks, stockpiling young talent. And Indiana, one of those other teams, again, we have to reach way back in the time machine to kind of figure out when they were, battling for an Eastern Conference playoff spot.
Yeah, and something with Bilal that's a little bit different is that he had genes not only shoot him up on the ruler, but in the draft. The kid was 5'11" when he started in that league as a teammate of Victor. He is now 6'8", just a couple of years later, 8 inches in less than 2 years, or 9 inches. My bad. He's 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan. So a really good get. I think he might be one of the more underrated players in this draft, and it has a lot to do with the fact of being in the shadow of a player like Victor. The fact that he had to defer to him in most situations. I think he's going to be one of the more intriguing prospects to watch, and seeing what he does. Is he done growing? Like, you grow 8 inches or 9 inches in that short of a time span. Is he really done growing? Could he get bigger? Um, and then what is he going to do as he gets bigger? Is that athleticism going to stay at the level that it's at? So I really like him. I like his pick being there in Indiana and being able to develop in a basketball town and a basketball state there in Indiana. I think he's in a good place.
Yeah, so we will see what the Pacers do this year as we await once again the Washington Wizards, who have been busy already in the last couple of days. Yesterday, they tried to trade Kristaps Porzingis to the Boston Celtics. They finally got it done the second go around, as the Clippers were a little iffy on Malcolm Brogdon's injury. And I kind of touched at the top of the show, Daniel, that Brogdon, who obviously now the reigning sixth man of the year, let's hold that thought as well. It appeared to be that Adam Silver was walking up to the stage, maybe not as they go back to the panel, but they were kind of scared. The Clippers were of Brogdon's injury. And again, he didn't play most, if not all, of the Eastern Conference Finals. And again, sixth man of the year this season. And so Clippers kind of ducked out of the trade. Obviously the Wizards and Celtics were part of that deal. And then finally, Kristaps gets it. Let me ask you that. Kristaps goes to Boston. Marcus Smart, good pickup by the Grizzlies, by the way. He goes to Memphis. And Tyus Jones goes to Washington. Our old pal Danilo Gallinari also goes over to the Wizards, where maybe other careers go to die as well. But why did Boston, if you're Boston, why did you want Kristaps so bad?
The only thing I can figure is that Kristaps gives them a physicality they really didn't have before, and an offensive skill set in a big man that they didn't have. They already had all the defense on the wings and all the size and all that with Tatum and Brown and all them. But I think it was just really, they thought that was their missing piece. They didn't really have, outside of the Williams kid when he was on the court, they didn't really have a rim protector of the old guild. Porzingis brings that size and that athleticism on both ends of the court. So I just think that they overthought it. I don't think they needed to make this big of a deal. They needed to add some pieces, but I think they needed to add more complementary pieces, more on their bench, especially when it comes to scoring. I don't think their bench has nearly enough scoring to keep up with the elite teams in the league in either conference. So this was just, I think to me, it was just an overthink of, oh, we got to get bigger, meaner, stronger. So they just went and got bigger. They forgot the meaner, stronger part. I'm not sure that Porzingis is that nasty guy that's going to be able to give your team the mentality they need to beat a team like Miami, like what happened in the Eastern Conference Finals there. So I don't see it moving the needle enough. I don't see Porzingis being that missing piece, and I think they gave away the heart and soul of their team. And chemistry is a seriously underrated aspect of any team in any sport. And when you start messing with that chemistry, man, it doesn't matter what type of talent you bring in. If you mess with the chemistry, it can destroy everything you've built.
Yeah, and we've seen it with the Nuggets. Obviously, the Washington Wizards make their pick as they get Jarris Walker out of Houston. So now I guess our college ticker meter is up to 3 now as Jarris Wallace, goes to the Washington Wizards. So he'll be teammates now. Yeah, we'll be teammates now with Tyus and Danilo there. He was the 2022-23 AC freshman or AAC freshman of the year in Houston. So Washington, another one of those teams who are kind of rebuilding, whatever you want to call it. I think Tyus Jones was a good pickup for them. He's going to be your starting point guard most likely, as we kind of see him back up Ja in the playoffs. Who knows what Ja status is? That's a whole nother topic for a whole nother day. But yeah, I want to say the Boston Celtics got Kristaps for physicality, but just like the Miami Heat, a lot of praise was given to Bam Adebayo for being a very good defensive center, and he is. But he's more of the weak side kind of good defensive center. If you bully into him, he's going to give in, which we saw again Nikola Jokic do basically to every center that stepped in his way this playoffs. Yes. And I feel like Kristaps, obviously he's 7'3". You think he's going to be a rim protector. I couldn't remember the last time I saw a highlight of Kristaps blocking a shot into the crowd. I don't know. I haven't watched too many Washington games or Dallas Mavericks games to say the least. But
Right.
I mean, but you notice when he's shooting threes, 7-3 guys shooting threes.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. Like you said with Bam, Bam's more of that small ball center. If you got a guy like a Nikola that can just body him, he's going to be exposed. And Porzingis is in the same type of an ilk. He's just a lot taller than Bam. Like I said, they went and got the bigger part, but they forgot the meaner and nastier part. They needed more like a guy that's more like Steve Adams than Kristaps Porzingis. They just need that guy that's going to set that screen hard, bully him in the paint, protect the rim, and they just went out and got more offense, which I don't think. Yeah, they needed a little bit more offense, but not from the 5. They could have went out and got it somewhere else and not had to give up Marcus Smart to get him. And I honestly think they overpaid for Kristaps on top of it. I don't like them giving up Marcus in the slightest because again, that's the heart and soul of your team, man. How do you rip that out and then expect them to just go out there and be the same or better? Kristaps has never been the heart and soul of any team he has ever been a part of. So to think that he's going to come in and somehow replace him or anybody else in that roster is going to be able to replace what Marcus Smart brought, I just don't think they have it. And they just overthought it. They panicked and they overreacted, and they probably made their team worse as opposed to making it better.
Yeah, it's funny because I saw a a picture of one of the last times that Marcus Smart was on the floor for the Boston Celtics in the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it was Caleb Martin shooting a corner jump shot, and it said, "This is Marcus Smart." It was a picture of him complaining to the officials rather than going to defend the jump shot by Caleb Martin. And he said, "This is going to be remembered in Celtics lore because it was the last time that we saw kind of Marcus Smart on the floor for the Celtics on defense." So I doubt he cares about that, but it's just kind of funny to see that as the Utah Jazz pick is in. As well, we thought again where they tease us showing the stage when they say the pick is in, so he's not going to walk up there. But I mean, obviously the Wizards trade Bradley Beal. They trade Kristaps Porzingis. They're them like kind of Houston and stuff like that, stockpiling, rebuilding. Again, Wizards, one of those teams. I don't think we've talked about them in the playoffs since maybe the John Wall days.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, it was just kind of tepid. Like, oh, they got a couple of nice pieces. It was never like, oh, this team could make some real noise. Like, yeah, I can't remember. I mean, really, honestly, since they changed their name from the Bullets into the Wizards, I can't think of a team that's really been like, man, I think they could make some noise in the playoffs. Like, I really can't think of a time that was ever really even a topic of conversation across the sports world.
Right. And yeah, maybe I mean they were more in the conversation when Jordan came out of retirement to play for the Washington Wizards. So it's kind of crazy to think about that as well. So I don't know. As we await the pick of the Utah Jazz, they have the 9th pick. This is one of 3 picks for Utah. We kind of saw them reload and retool and stuff like that. Obviously, they trade Donovan Mitchell to Cleveland. They trade Rudy Gobert, who I think is also in witness protection. They trade him to Minnesota. Again, a lot has been made.
Did they not absolutely fleece Minnesota in that trade for Gobert?
Yeah, that's crazy. And speaking of draft night trades, crazy to think about that the Denver Nuggets actually drafted Donovan Mitchell and actually drafted Rudy Gobert.
Yeah, both of them, and they both ended up in Utah.
Yeah,
a division rival. Like that was one of the weirdest storylines ever. Is like, how do you allow that to happen?
Well,
could you imagine if they would think of the difference in history? Like, what would it have changed if they kept those 2 guys? Like, I don't see Rudy being able to keep Nikola on the bench, and I mean, Donovan mixed with those guys and Jamal, if they're still able to get Jamal, and these guys, like, do they go after an MPJ? There's so many questions that are changed. And you know what? I like the way that history unfolded. I'll take the team we have now over the Spider Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, who have done nothing. And honestly, I don't think will do anything no matter where they're at. They're never lucky enough to be on a team. They're always with a bunch of individuals.
Yeah, and I guess you kind of mentioned you don't see Gobert coming out, or Jokic kind of coming off the bench for Gobert. I mean, if that were to come into fruition, do the Nuggets even draft Joker if they have Gobert at that point?
I mean, I don't see why you wouldn't, considering where they got Jokic during a Quesarito commercial in the second round. So,
And
I would.
by the way,
I wouldn't be surprised.
in memoriam of Jokic being drafted during a Quesarito commercial. There you go.
That's great.
It has gone cold, but
that looks better than the Quesarito, though.
Yeah, I'm not going to tear it apart because I would just make a mess. As ESPN is at commercial, I think they're back now. The pick is in for the Utah Jazz, and we'll get to Adam Silver right now on the stage.
With the 9th pick.
Taylor
Hendricks from UCF goes to the Utah Jazz, a forward, again, out of UCF. So, again, Utah Jazz is Jordan Clarkson even still there? Is he running around over there still? Is Karl Malone still over there?
I'm sorry, you cut out on that on my end. What was the question?
Oh, I was going to say is because Jordan Clarkson, I'm assuming, is still on the Utah Jazz. So, I don't know if you're trying to pair him with all these young guys, because he's basically the only guy left because Ingles isn't even there anymore. You trade. Mike Conley was part of that Gobert trade to Minnesota. John Stockton's not coming out of that locker room in short shorts anytime soon.
Right. And who would have thought off of that roster, the only one left would be Jordan Clarkson? Like that's the guy that they chose to keep. I guess maybe he's the least controversial out of them. I don't know what their decision was there, but that's how it shook out. Really, that's all that you could do at this point with Utah. They are in a full-on rebuild. Clarkson better be looking forward to a bunch of L's coming his way, especially in the conference that he's in. This is going to be a lot like we were talking about with the Spurs and that they're way far from just one piece away. So they're going to be stockpiling. They're in a full rebuild. Like I said, they just gave away everything that they had outside of Clarkson over the last 12 months. So yeah, they're going to pair him with Clarkson and whoever else they're able to pick up out of here. Like you said, I think they got 3 picks, 2 picks in the first round, right? No, 3. That's right. They got this one, 16.
Yeah, Utah.
And and 28. So yeah, they got the 3 picks. They're just going to be stockpiling. They're going to be one of those teams that they're going to take even though they got 5 picks when you consider the second round, they're going to take each and every one of them because they need them to fill out that roster. Because they're not going to get any veterans to come to that team with the way that they're built. So the only way they're going to build a team is through the draft at this point. And so yeah, just stack them picks, keep taking them all, and you better hope you hit them because it's nice to stack the picks. It's nice to call it a rebuild. But the key to that rebuild is hitting on those picks. And there's only been a couple of franchises that have been able to do it consistently over the last couple of seasons. That's Denver here, Miami down in Florida. So whether Utah has the front office to develop these guys is going to be the key. They can stack them all they want, but you got to hit on them and you got to develop them. So that's what we're going to have to see going forward.
Yeah, and this next pick is we wait for the Mavericks their pick is in, so we'll get to the podium here in a second. It's interesting who they're going to draft because now you are adding to the, I want to say, ego room of Luka Doncic, and I'm assuming Kyrie is coming back. I mean, I kind of said this when Phoenix made the trade for Beal, Daniel, and there's only one ball to go around. And I never thought that Kyrie Irving was going to mesh well with Luka.
At all.
Yeah, and it came into fruition that was not going to be the case. That chemistry that you talked about a little bit earlier was not there for Dallas. And reports came out a couple days ago that the Mavericks were basically the only team still interested in bringing Kyrie back. And many thought too. I read a couple of things that said that Mavericks could possibly package this 10th overall pick with Kyrie to a trade, but nobody's going to pick up that contract. So this pick for Mavericks is going to be interesting to see who they put with Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'm right there with you. The day the trade happened, I laughed and I posted on every social media I had that this is going to be one of the worst trades we have ever seen, because putting two ball hog, ball heavy scorers that have to have volume. They are not a Jokic. They do not score with efficiency. They are not going to have 12 of 13, 13 of 15 nights. They have to take 20 plus shots to be at their best. So putting those two guys together is never going to work. A lot like you said with Bradley Beal and Devin Booker down in Phoenix, the same type of situation. They're very ball heavy scorers. So trying to put those together, it's never going to work. The fact that they are the only team that wants Kyrie does not surprise me. They gave up a king's ransom for a headache. They got the headache, didn't learn from it, and now they're going to double down, because what else is Mark Cuban going to do? You give away all of that talent, all of that draft capital for a guy everybody said it was going to blow up in your face, and it did. The only thing you can do is the Elon Musk thing and just double down on it and push harder on the bad decision you made.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting. And they just on ESPN right now, they showed the kind of a clip of Kyrie as being an unrestricted free agent. It's, again, and I was just mentioning that Dallas was kind of reported as the only team interested in Kyrie's services. And, there was mixed reviews. Personally, I thought, again, that chemistry was not going to work. There's only one ball to go around. Obviously, Luka's damn near averaging 40 points a game. You add Kyrie to the mix. Really quickly, let's get to Dallas's selection, Adam Silver. Here it is.
Okay. We've already had players traded.
So there you go. Cason Wallace as the announced that trade before that. So Coulibaly will go to Washington for Jarace Walker. The Indiana Pacers selected Coulibaly with the 7th pick just a few picks ago. Washington was right after them with Jarace Walker, excuse me. Now Cason Wallace out of Kentucky, the guard out of Kentucky. And let's face it, Kentucky, pretty well known for some pretty dang good basketball players. I think they're kind of getting up there with the Dukes of the world, maybe the North Carolinas of the world. Obviously, here locally in Denver, the Jamal Murrays of the world played 1 year under Calipari in Kentucky as well. So we have there was a trade that was announced. So another guard goes to Dallas, and this is going to be interesting. We just touched on what's going to happen with Kyrie being an unrestricted free agent, and so they pick a guard, which is interesting. I think it's a little bit interesting with the 10th overall pick. You don't sit 10th overall picks very much or very long on the bench, Daniel. So
No.
playing time is going to be it's going to be interesting down in Big D.
Yeah, I mean, there's another, like you said, another guard. He was pretty ball heavy in college too. I don't know what Dallas is thinking of getting a bunch of guys that need the rock constantly with, again, like you said, only one ball to go around. So what they're doing in Dallas, I am at a loss. I cannot even fathom to make an assumption of what they're thinking at this point. I mean, you like Cason Wallace, like you said, Kentucky's pretty much a breeding ground of blue chip prospects since John Calipari took over there. So he's more than likely going to develop into at least a very good, if not a great player in the NBA, which means he has to be on the court, which means he has to have the ball, just like Luka, just like Kyrie. So if they do bring back Kyrie and they make this pick and they don't trade either him or Kyrie, I'm at a complete loss. And I am convinced that the Dallas Mavericks have absolutely no clue what they are doing in the basketball realm at all.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm assuming that Mark Cuban is. We know him as a pretty hands-on owner, as the Orlando Magic once again on the clock. So we'll see what they do with their second pick already. It's only 11 picks in. Daniel, Orlando is on their second pick of this NBA draft, and I'm looking at the I guess supposed roster as Kyrie Irving is still on the depth chart for the Dallas Mavericks, and looking at their guards. Besides Kyrie, I mean, I don't know what they're going to do. I still don't think Luka should be listed as a point guard, but I know he handles the ball about 95% of the game.
Right.
Josh Green, I don't know. I mean, this is just me kind of spitballing what their guards look like. Theo Pinson, a guy that nobody's ever heard of.
Yeah. Uh-oh.
AJ
Did I freeze or? Oh.
Lawson.
Oh, we got Lag City. I don't know if that's me or if that's you. Can y'all still hear me? Or just... Oh, I am froze. He is froze. At least on my end. Mike, you still with me? Am I here? I don't know who's here, who's not. Somebody in the chat, let me know. I don't know if I need to take over or not. Gotta love live TV. So just in case I'm not the one frozen, I'm gonna sit here and talk and see what's going on here. Right now we are still waiting. Oh, Orlando pick is in. Their first pick was Anthony Black, guard out of Arkansas, at number 6 overall. They still have this pick at number 11 and the 36th pick in the second round. Oh, yep, looks like it was Mike that dropped. All right, so we have another trade here. The Bulls have received Nikola Vukovic and Al-Farouq Aminu, and the Magic received Wendell Carter Jr., Otto Porter Jr., 21 first and 23 first, which is what got Magic this pick at 11 from Chicago. So sorry, that's not another trade. That was the trade that got Orlando this pick. So the pick is in. Adam Silver, I'm sorry, I can't simulcast, so I can't show y'all Adam Silver making the pick, but the selection is in, and it is Jet Howard, guard out of Michigan. The run on college kids is official. So kid Jet Howard, guard out of Michigan, is now going to Orlando to join Anthony Black, and Mike is back. So I can stop bloviating.
All right. Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you open ESPN, Daniel. Everything just falls apart.
It just breaks everything.
Just breaks everything.
How dare you?
Yeah.
Uh-oh. I think I'm... And I just got dropped.
Well, I can still hear you. Oh, there. I mean,
still
I can
hear
still
me?
hear you.
Right.
Yeah, your camera's a little bit gone.
I think
So
my
this
camera just did something. Yeah, go ahead, talk.
Yeah, I mean, this is just what happens when you try something new and inventive. You just lose all kind of momentum, but we still can hear you, so that's a good thing. As you mentioned, the Orlando Magic select Jet Howard out of Michigan, the Oklahoma City Thunder now on the clock, actually moving kind of good for the NFL draft. I might say so.
Yeah, I was actually going to be talking about like the pace of the NBA draft as opposed to all the rest of the draft, because it's only 2 rounds. It's like we're over an hour in, and we're barely halfway through the first round. We
Right.
have done finished like at least 25 picks in the NFL. We'd be through the first round and probably through the competitive rounds in MLB at this point. It's crazy to see the difference in the pace that is happening between these leagues. Let's
Yeah,
see if I fix
and
my camera.
yeah, we can hear you though. So that's the most important thing here. As yeah, the Oklahoma City Thunder on the clock. This is going to kind of be an interesting pick too. You're adding to a team that has Shea Gilgis Alexander, so we're going to see how that kind of all meshes. A lot of votes for the
There we go.
NBA. He made an All NBA team. He got a few votes for NBA MVP. Asked Mark Jackson about that. So we're kind of expecting, I don't want to say bigger things for the Thunder this next season. One of those was on the cusp of a play-in team, but they fell just short of making it into the actual round, the actual tournament rounds for the playoffs. So, I mean, what are you expecting for the Thunder? Are they trending? I guess is a more, I guess, adequate way to say. Are the Thunder trending back in the right direction as we just saw? Cool to see. Juwan Howard, his son, just got drafted by a team that, I mean, I'm assuming that Juwan Howard played for the Magic at some point. He played for about 29 out of 30 teams.
Yeah, he played for almost all of them. I would not be surprised if that's one of them. But as far as the trajectory I see OKC on, I am there with you. I do believe this is a team that is on the rise. They made that. They're going to take that next step, I believe, next year. A lot like what we saw with Cleveland over the last couple of years is like, oh, they were budding. Oh, they almost made it, and then boom, all of a sudden they're one of the better teams in the league because they just kept stacking those draft picks. They kept hitting on those draft picks, and they developed those draft picks as we had talked about earlier. And I believe OKC's in that same boat. I think they're not gonna be quite at the level of what Cleveland was this year, but I think they'll be closer to what Cleveland was last year.
And I mean, yeah, I'm looking at the Washington Wizards. I know for sure that Juwan Howard played for them. I'm looking at the Dallas Mavericks logo. I know for sure that the Juwan Howard played for them. How about this? Juwan Howard, one season in Denver did Juwan Howard play. And quick little
Wow.
personal
Who's
fact for
that?
you, Daniel. I actually had Juwan Howard's Skyline jersey that year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's
That's
somewhere in a box.
nice. You
Yeah,
know what? I honestly completely forgot he had been in Denver. But yes, he did play in Orlando.
yeah.
Oh
I was
three
gonna
to
say
oh
that
four.
sounds familiar.
Yep, right after the Nuggets. After he left the Nuggets, he went to Orlando. So he
Yeah.
actually spent two. He had two stints in Denver.
Oh
Oh
yeah,
two, oh
I know.
three, and oh 08.
Yeah, I know there
Okay.
was two different times, and yeah, the 0203. He actually had a pretty decent year in that 0203. I don't have the stats in front of me. Maybe you do. I want to say I want to say low to high 20 points per game. If I'm just spitballing, we have a mantra on the wheelhouse, Daniel, with me and Matt, where we are zero research, all reaction is our hashtag. So we look nothing up.
My motto. That's great. No, I don't have it in front of me, so I can't verify that. But hey, it sounds like a good number to me. So we'll throw it against the wall and we'll say it stuck.
Yeah, it stuck a little bit, and you had a 50% chance of getting Juwan Howard on at least quarter of the teams in the NBA. So we have that
Yes.
going for Juwan Howard as ESPN heads to a timeout. We're going to actually take a break here. We'll stay on the screen, but we're going to take a quick timeout as well as we are covering the NBA draft right here on the. Excuse me, I switched the page there. Of course, that would happen as we are covering the draft for the first time, trying something new, and of course, it wouldn't be nothing without technical difficulties. I think we run into technical difficulties almost every Sunday morning, Daniel. It is incredible. So it's almost expected at this point, and everything just it wouldn't be a show without everything falling apart. So we'll take a quick break along with ESPN right here on Elevation 5280 Sports and Lifestyle. All right, as we are back here for Elevation 5280 Sports and Lifestyle live special for the draft as Oklahoma City is making their selection now. Well, we just missed the announcement, but it is Derek Lively, the second out of Duke, the center. So kind of an interesting pick with kind of that, I want to say the empty space in the middle for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And that was kind of what they were missing, Daniel, that, ever since Steven Adams went to Memphis, they kind of were missing that guy in the middle. So we'll see how quickly that Derek Lively out of Duke, once again, 7'1", 230. I mean, watching him on ESPN doesn't look like a beefy type dude, again, in a suit and stuff like that. So you kind of can't really assume anything from that. But I think this is a decent pick for the Oklahoma City Thunder, and this is kind of what they needed to kind of, again, fill that middle area.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's not a Steve Adams. He's not that big, bulky guy yet, but he does have a frame that he could get at least close to that. Like I say, he's already 230 pounds. So even though he's a bit skinny, he's 7 foot, 7 footer. So you can tell that's why he looks a little bit skinny, but he's got much wider hips than like a Victor Wembanyama and a bit broader shoulders. So that's why I say he's got a bit more of a frame to put on more than like a Victor Wembanyama, who's much taller but much skinnier as well, especially in the hips. So this is the guy. He might not be the Steve Adams where he's going to set a screen and somebody's going to feel like they died after they ran into it, but they're still going to fill him. Like he's still going to be able to play and be a rim protector of the ilk of that type of a center. And like you said, he was kind of that missing piece there in the middle that they needed to get a bit more physical.
Yeah, and like we said, Oklahoma City kind of trending in that, maybe bottom of the Western Conference bracket when it comes to the postseason. And, kind of like what a lot of people say, especially about Victor, over in France, playing for the Metropolitan 92s, he's playing with grown men, because when you're playing in these Italy leagues, Spain leagues, Argentina, whatever, if you're a 20-year-old, you're still playing against, if you're even an 18-year-old, you're still playing against guys who are, I guess, in their quote unquote primes. We don't see a lot of those guys in the NBA, but they're in their international basketball primes. A guy like comes to mind, like Manu Ginobili played in Argentina. He was playing against men in those international leagues. So, it's kind of different. And the reason I brought that up, because Lively, obviously coming from Duke, you don't really, going against other college kids, the comparison is now a lot of kids coming out of college, like you mentioned, the chance to go from high school into the G League, into these international teams. A lot of kids are choosing that route because I think they're going to have a lot lengthier NBA career, because they're already going up against what that, specific country, whatever, they're already going up against men in those leagues, unlike college nowadays.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing about those leagues is that when you're playing against those men, they don't care that you were the number one prospect in Illinois or number one prospect of all high school seniors. They don't care. They're going to still body you just as hard as anybody else in that league. So I think that there is something to be said about these kids, like you said, going and playing against these other grown men, unlike in college where you're going to have a guy, you could be playing against a Division III foe where their center's like 6'7". And so you're just that much bigger, stronger, taller, and that's what you're used to. And so getting into the league, it's a bit of a culture shock. So I definitely think there's something to be said about the mentality that these international players come in that's a much different than these, I hate to say it, but pampered kids in college. Like they're the big men on campus. That's a saying, and it's a cliche for a reason, because that's how they're treated. So definitely, I think there's a differentiation between the kids coming out of college and the kids coming out of these international leagues, and it's a big difference when it comes to mentality.
Yeah, so they're used to those, banging in the paint, banging up against bigger bodies, mature bodies. So
Yep.
That's kind of what the appeal for Victor Wembanyama was, and maybe even his teammate Bilal Coulibaly, who was drafted by Indiana,
Right.
traded to Washington. Kind of what those guys have an advantage of going against these older guys. Not only playing against them, but learning from these older guys. And a lot of these Europeans are bringing their skill set over to the NBA. Obviously, we're seeing it right here in Denver with Nikola Jokic. And, it's kind of hard to think of Jokic coming off the bench and in his first season or two, coming in for Yusuf Nurkic, another guy, again, who kind of came over. Maybe his personality wasn't mature, but his game was pretty mature to start off his career in Denver. And a lot of those Europeans have that advantage now.
Yes, I'm 100% with you. I agree. Yeah, there's definitely something they're built different because of those experiences.
We'll see what Toronto does here. And as they have the number 13th overall pick, Pelicans right behind them, Hawks right behind them, as we're inching towards halfway through this draft. A lot of the news, as they're showing on the screen, ESPN, a lot of the news, Fred VanVleet, an unrestricted free agent, as he opted out of his player option about a week or so ago. So he was kind of one of the first guys to say, I'm getting the hell out of Toronto, getting the hell out of my current team. And, Toronto, we were expecting them to, I don't want to say rebuild, but kind of retool as Adam Silver is coming out. So we'll head to the podium. Let me turn that on mute. Grady Dick gets picked with the 13th overall pick out of Kansas. Interesting enough, former teammate of Christian Braun. So we will see how he works in with the Toronto Raptors. And I was kind of saying, kind of retooling in Toronto. We didn't think that Fred VanVleet would even make it this far with Toronto, especially, after Kyle Lowry, whole thing to Miami. I think Pascal Siakam is still in Toronto, and they definitely went the route of, after Kawhi Leonard left, after they won the championship, it was just we're kind of lost. We don't know where we're going, and then Nick Nurse decides he didn't decide to leave, but he got let go after this season, and it was just kind of a mess in Toronto. So now I think Toronto's entering that unfortunate, I guess, atmosphere, Daniel, of becoming one of those teams who need to go a different route, and we're seeing it now.
Yeah, they've kind of been stuck in that limbo of mediocrity. They've never really been terrible enough to get into the high end of the lottery, but never really good enough to make any noise in the conference either. And I think the biggest thing for Toronto is, like, did they pick him because of that jacket? Like, can he live up to that Dorothy jacket he's wearing there for Grady Dick? Like,
kind of convenient too, because it is Raptors colors.
Yes, that's what I said. Like, that is it. Like, he was talking about how he literally brought up that the reason he picked that jacket was because it reminded him of Dorothy's slippers, and they're both Kansas natives. Weird, but hey, I guess do you, homie? But yeah, Grady Dick coming in there, adding a little spice to that team can't be a bad thing, especially when you're looking at losing your franchise guard and Fred VanVleet, as we just said, going out there. I think this kind of puts the writing on the wall of people wondering, did VanVleet just opt out so that way he could re-sign? This might be a sign that he's out of there. And to think that everybody was talking about how Gary Trent Jr. was going to be gone at the trade deadline. Not only was he not gone there, he's the one that opts in, and VanVleet opts out. So, yeah, they're that listless sailboat out there without a rudder, just kind of circling the drain at this point. They're just kind of in that middle ground. Maybe this is the point where they just sell off everything that they got and start sucking to get those higher draft picks. Or do they sit here in the limbo that they've been in? This could be a big pick on deciding on whether or not that happens. If he hits and as good as some of the people say he's going to be, maybe they don't have to go into a full rebuild. But to me, with the way that this roster is built at this point, I say just cut bait, get rid of everything of value, get back as many picks as you can, and just start that rebuild now. Rip the Band-Aid off, Stop just, like I said, circling the drain and just get it over with and move on and start building up that next team.
It's unfortunate for teams because they know, and maybe the Nuggets are kind of going through it right now. They know these windows to win are so small, and even back was it 2019 when the Toronto Raptors won. I don't know if anybody really. So I don't want to say they came out of left field, and this is pre-COVID, so my memory's kind of shot, I guess, but it they made the playoffs here and there again in that Eastern Conference. It was a little easier, back a few years ago, but it never seemed like Toronto had that 3 to 5 year window like maybe the Nuggets do now, or that the Warriors had for so long, that the Heat had for so long. It never seemed like Toronto had that window, and maybe I'm remembering that wrong, but I mean, Toronto hasn't made it past. I want to say the first round in a couple of years. I could be wrong on that. That's the last I heard, but it seems like they never had that championship window that everyone else seems to have. That 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, I think the fact of the way that the contract was structured with Kawhi kind of set him up for that. It was kind of like all chips in the middle. We're either going to win it all and it's going to be great, or this thing's going to implode. We're not going to do it, and then we're going to have to sell off these pieces even faster than we thought. But yeah, again, just at this point, you gotta just rip the Band-Aid off. They have nothing left at this point. Just get into it, get it done, get it over with. The longer that you push these things back, the worse it gets. So yeah, just face the reality and move on.
As we are awaiting now the pick from the New Orleans Pelicans, as they have the number 14 pick in this NBA draft, as again we're inching closer to halfway. A lot has been made of of Zion Williamson, who again started the year off pretty fantastic, Daniel. It seemed like he had his explosiveness. It seemed like he had his jump. And then once again, he made pit stops at McDonald's and then hurt himself again. And now, I mean, if you have the luxury of an adult film star calling the Pelicans bluff and being rich, that's kind of where I want to be in life. But hey, that's neither here nor there. And a lot of people kind of maybe expecting, number 14 pick. I don't know if I said that. Kind of expecting the Pelicans to maybe package this pick in a trade for Zion, but obviously the Pelicans front office is not falling for any kind of porn stars gibberish. So right. unless Adam Silver goes up there and says I have a trade to announce, what do you make? I mean, what do you make of Zion? I mean, is it time for that? I don't want to call it an experiment, but is it time for the Pelicans to move on, because it seems to be hamstringing them?
It really is at this point. Like I said that this was the most likely outcome of selecting Zion over Ja. Like, this is the risk that you took, was a guy that was that big, that explosive. How will his joints hold up? And he already had the whole ankle issue in college with the bad shoe and all that happened. I never really liked his foundation, and as a big guy, the foundation is crucial. So him ending up in the situation that we're in now is not that surprising to me. It's kind of what I expected. I didn't expect the porn star thing, but I guess this is the NBA, and that's what happens, I guess. But everything else I was definitely expecting. I would, if I was them and I had any chance to package him and this pick to get up with, like, say, the Trailblazers, because that's what I thought would happen. Is I thought that Dame would put enough pressure on him that they would go out there and take a guy like a Zion to give that name recognition, put people in the seats, try and appease Dame by saying, "Hey, look, we got you another big star." Even though it's a star with warts, it was still a big star. That's what I expected. So to see them standing pat and now taking this pick, still not even trading the pick, let alone not Zion, that was a bit of a shocker to me, because if I'm the GM, I'm cutting bait. He's gone, and I'm taking every and anything that I can to fleece anybody from that might want him. So the fact that they took a guard and Jordan Hawkins there from UConn, that's a bit of a surprise to me. I really thought that we'd be seeing Zion Williamson in another uniform come next season.
Yeah, and we just saw, and I don't remember what it said, but the Thunder and the, I want to say Pacers just flashed on the screen as they made a trade swapping some picks, or excuse me, it was the Thunder and Mavericks swapping some picks and a player. I think it said I don't remember who it said. We'll have to go back and look at that. But yeah, a guard now for the New Orleans Pelicans, and look, they have some nice pieces in New Orleans. You know, Brandon Ingram, Zion when he's healthy.
Yes.
I mentioned, you know, Zion at the beginning of the season, Daniel, looked, again, the sample size for Zion has been mediocre at best, but he looked good. I mean, he looked in shape.
Yeah.
He looked like he had his explosiveness, and then again, it just kind of fell down the drain. He was doing, I mean, behind the back windmill dunks. I mean, he had that one dunk when New Orleans was up by like 20 and nobody liked it. I mean, I don't mind it, but I think that was just Zion showing people that he's back, and it all just kind of crumbled to the ground. So, you know, drafting a guard, you know, they really haven't been, you know, good at guard almost since, you know, Drew Holiday has departed. Shoot, even since JJ Redick left the fold in New Orleans, they just haven't been the same at guard. So, you know, adding maybe this piece, I don't know how much he'll play with Brandon Ingram, and I want to say the NBA is better. You know how they say, I'll use this for an example just because we're in Denver. They say the NFL is better when the Raiders are good. The NBA as a whole is good when Zion is healthy because he's that face of the league. He's got a big smile, athletic dunks. You know, he's got his wife on one arm, a porn star on the other. I mean, there's nothing better than that. So, and I don't know if he has a wife, but word is that, you know, this is his side piece. So we're not going to get into the politics of that. But again, what a life. I mean, this is just, yeah. I mean, New Orleans has, I mean, I don't want to say they're trending in the way of the Thunder, but they have some nice pieces.
Yes. Yeah. I'm definitely not, I'm with you. I'm not ready to put them in the ilk of the teams like the Thunder and things like that, or Cleveland of the past couple of years, but they are definitely trending in the right direction. And I like a lot of the pieces. And don't get me wrong, I love Zion Williamson when he's healthy. But again, I was speaking as if I was the GM. And I'm the GM, I don't think about my personal feelings and what I like to see when he's healthy. I'm thinking about the business aspects of it. And Zion, as good as he has been for business for the most part, there's also other issues that could pop up here very, very soon with those side pieces and things of that nature. You got one porn star. What's to say he doesn't got multiples? You know what I'm saying? So things could be ugly. I don't have the inside. I'm not saying that that's the case, but if you are the GM, you got to know those things. And if that is the case, you got to cut bait and you got to move on, regardless of how talented they are. I mean, I think Kyrie Irving has proven that regardless of what your talent is, if you are a cancer in the locker room or of any kind, your team can't do anything with it. So if there is any inkling that this could blow up into anything more, I think you see Zion out. So that might mean that there's not. But at this time, we're all just kind of guessing because we don't know what we're going to get from him. We don't know how often he's going to be on the court. We don't know if this off the court stuff he's been doing is going to come back to bite him. There's just so many question marks around the guy. I love the talent, but I hate the circus.
And you know, this is why stuff like this, porn stars calling out teams, blackmailing teams, this is why the Nuggets are boring. So keep that in mind. Yeah. They don't have
boring.
Yeah. I mean, Jokic has got a cute wife and a baby, but if he's pulling in porn stars who are trying to hamstring your franchise, maybe they'll make a few more headlines. So that is the case in New Orleans as we wait for the Atlanta Hawks, their only pick here in the first round. And once they make their pick, we will be about halfway done. Their pick is in. They were 41-41 last season, lost in the play-in tournament. A lot of questions were, you know, are they going to trade Trae Young? There was word that Dallas Mavericks was interested in Clint Capella. And here is Adam Silver at the podium. Cody Buffkin from Michigan. So that strings, let's see here, Daniel. That strings 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 players in a row now from your traditional college here in the States. So I don't know if the European players have tapered off. We will wait to see. Maybe some more G League guys. We will wait to see. Atlanta, again, we just mentioned before Adam Silver went on the podium, and Utah Jazz, they're on the clock now for their second selection here in the first round. We kind of mentioned Trae Young. Is he going to stay? Is he go? They had Nate McMillan was kind of let go during the middle of the season. They bring in Quinn Snyder. It seemed to be meshing well. Again, they lost in the playoff game to the aforementioned Miami Heat. So they had that. In the Eastern Conference, I think you trend a little bit different than teams in the Western Conference, especially now when the champion, the last 2 years, at least reaching back 2 years, you have the NBA champions residing in the Western Conference with the Warriors and now the Nuggets. The Eastern Conference has that. I think Boston's going to remain at the top for a couple more years as long as Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of figure their. I don't want to say they don't have chemistry, Daniel, but we kind of saw it fall apart, taper off in the Eastern Conference Finals. Atlanta's in an interesting situation. I don't know if they're trending up. I don't know if they're trending down. I guess that all depends on how happy Trae Young is.
Yeah, and I mean, they are the quintessential 500 team. Like you said, they're just kind of sitting there in limbo. You don't know if they're good, but you don't know if they're bad. I mean, are they a piece away? Are they multiple pieces away? How bad is the chemistry? How good is there's another one of those franchises that just has so many questions swirling. And I think that for them to get better and get back to being that playoff caliber team they were for multiple years, they've got to figure those questions out. They got to get that chemistry down. They got to figure out who's leading the franchise, both on the court and in the front office. I think there's just a lot of confusion going on there in Atlanta. They just don't really have an identity. One of their biggest things was they didn't have any type of a rim protector. I know this is the modern NBA, and you don't need the old school rim protectors like you had back in the day, but you still need a guy that's going to get physical in the paint. As the Nuggets showed, Jokic isn't out there blocking a bunch of shots, but if you got fast hands, you can steal balls, you can disrupt passing lanes, things like that. You can be just as effective as the Embiids and the Steve Adams and that of the world that are out there blocking multiple shots a game. So if they're able to fix that biggest key, I think they have a chance to make some noise. If they don't, then we could see another 500 or even under 500 season from Atlanta, which might still get them in the playoffs. We don't know if this new Eastern Conference is what we're going to get used to, but it could always regress, and they might still sneak in the playoffs. But really, without getting more physical in the paint, this team's never going to make any noise past maybe the first round.
A lot of talk too was Collins. Yeah, I'm really struggling with this mute button. So
it's all right, man.
Yeah, it's gonna drive me to drink here. And yeah, it's depending on Trae Young, how happy he is. And, you bring in a guy like Kobe Buffkin, another guard, how is that going to be perceived by maybe Trae Young, by Collins, guys who were you saw the frustration come out, in that play-in game towards the end of the season. Is Quinn Snyder the supplemental coach? Is he going to be there? A lot of comparisons now are going to be on how the Nuggets are doing things, being patient, holding on to Jamal and MPJ, Michael Porter Jr. through their injuries, being patient with Michael Malone for now 8 seasons when we just saw 3 championship coaches in the last 5 years, Daniel, get fired after winning championships.
Right.
And Michael Malone has yet to get past at least one Western Conference Finals before this season. That's the farthest they've ever gone as with Michael Malone at the helm.
Yes.
Patience. I mean, you need that. And I'm struggling to find the word. It was on the tip of my tongue. You need that, that familiarity. You need that walking into the office every day, seeing the same guys sitting in the chairs, seeing the coach and the same coach in the office. When you keep changing things up, I think that loses guys, and you're like, man, I'm just not safe here. because these guys are humans. They're going to think about it in the back of their mind of, am I going to get traded, stuff like that. So the patience that the Nuggets showed, hopefully, and maybe we'll see that spread throughout the league.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, like it's a famous trope in the NFL. For NFL fans, they know the saying, which is that it's a copycat league. And that goes really true for every professional league. Once one team has success doing something, it tends to spread throughout the league. And you've seen it after LeBron James made the decision and created the big three in Miami. All the teams had to go get their big three. After the big three that was in Boston, then Miami, then everybody had to get their big three, because that's the only way that you can win a championship now, is you got to have all these great superstars come together in free agency, and you got to bring them in with big money, and that's how you win a championship. Then Denver went out here and proved that there's more than one way to skin a cat. So they went out there, they did the patient route, they got the coach, they got the players, and they let them grow together. And I think there's something to be said about that type of approach. I think that is much more conducive to those championship windows that we were talking about a little bit ago, is that when you allow the teams to grow together, they tend to stick together. You don't, instead of having a band of mercenaries, you have the most famous word from the playoff run from the Nuggets. You don't have a team, you have a family. That's what you have to create. If you want a sustained championship roster, they have to become a family, not just a band of mercenaries that are there for their own individual goals. Everybody has to be pulling for the same goal. Like, you can make it work, like we saw with LeBron James, the multiple stops. He'll get you 1 or 2 championships, but that window tends to slam shut after those championships. With the Nuggets, I think we're going to see a differentiation back to the days of, the Bulls in the 90s and the Pistons in the 80s and things of that nature, where you're going to see more dynasties if teams are willing to build the way that Denver was. But the problem is, we also live in a society that's now, give it to me now, I can't wait. So how do you balance those two dynamics from a front office wanting to have the patience to a fan base like, say, the Lakers or the Celtics, who aren't going to have the patience of a smaller market like the Nuggets and teams of that ilk?
Yeah, and you mentioned that, and obviously we're going to compare a lot of these teams to Denver because we get to watch them firsthand, and that's like a guy like Aaron Gordon, who was the number one option, the number one go-to guy, the playmaker in Orlando for a couple seasons. He comes here, and it's amazing because he might not even be the third option on the Denver Nuggets. He's 4.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes 5. I mean, obviously, your staples in Jokic and Murray are going to be there. They're going to get you, they're going to get you whatever they're going to get you, a combined 40, 50, 60 points, whatever it is. But who's going to be that because, Jokic 1A, Murray 1B, who's going to be 2? Who's going to be 3? And Adam Silver heading to the podium for the Jazz pick. So another guard off the board from Baylor, Keontae George, as the Utah Jazz make the 16th overall pick in the 2023 NBA draft, kind of putting a stamp on the 2023 season. And, well, Daniel, we mentioned Jordan Clarkson, basically the only, I guess, namesake for the Utah Jazz left on that roster after, the trades that were made before this last season. And it's kind of crazy to think of Utah just rebuilding. I don't think I've ever said in my life, "Oh, Utah's rebuilding." I don't think I've ever uttered those words. But now we've kind of come to that point for Utah.
Yeah, I don't think you can classify it any way else. The mass exodus of talent and the mass influx of young prospects and draft picks, there's no other way to put it than it's a straight rebuild. This is not a retool. This is not a tweak or anything. They are in a full throw rebuild at this point. You really can't justify it any other way. So seeing them standing pat and taking all these picks is not going to be a surprise. you really got to. At this point, there's so many holes on that roster. And with the new CBA, with the hard cap and all of that, um, getting these guys on these team-friendly rookie deals is going to be essential to making sure you stay under that cap and still have the cap room to sign any guys that you might actually hit on and give them those max contracts that they earn them. So yeah, Utah in a rebuild. It's weird to say, it's weird to think, but we are officially in our lifetime watching Utah completely tear it down and rebuild it from the bolts up.
Yeah, and at least for the last couple of years, because you had the staple and cogs in Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert. You can even throw Mike Conley into that conversation. So it'll be interesting to see if Jordan Clarkson wants to stay, what they'll do with his contract. I don't know what his contract is, but it's going to be interesting if he's even on this team when season started, as before the season starts, as we now await the LA Lakers with the 17th pick, as we have now crept halfway through this NBA draft. The Lakers are going to be another interesting team to watch this offseason. Obviously, the Nuggets ran up against them in the Western Conference Finals. One of those play-in teams who I've said it way back when the trade deadline happened. They absolutely nailed the trade deadline out of the park, bringing D'Angelo Russell back, Malik Beasley, Jared Vanderbilt. Guys like that were just the missing pieces. And of course, I tell Matt on our show this all the time, the conspiracy theorist in me is that LeBron was going to sit out the rest of the season until they started winning games. Let's face it. He was very quick to tell you that he might retire. I'm surprised that before the NBA finals even started that they didn't do an aerial shot of him mowing his lawn. There's just so much going on. And then, he kind of doesn't clap back at Michael Malone and one of the guys here in our local media for saying that Michael Malone is the Lakers' daddy. So, if you're really replying to that, then you got bigger issues if you're LeBron James. But anyway, the Lakers are going to be interesting. Yeah, the Lakers are going to be interesting going forward, Daniel. Who do you put around LeBron? Because a lot of these contracts are expiring.
Really, at this point, I mean, you need another guard. You need some scoring, some perimeter shooting. You also need a lot of defense. Like, they really thought that Schroeder was the answer. Anthony Davis, when he's at his best, can pester Jokic. But I would say they'd probably need another forward. Who is even left on the board at this point when it comes to forward? I know there's a lot of forwards left because they've had a run on guards as we've been speaking here. It seems like that's another thing, is like all these guards that have taken, like, are people really paying attention to the Nuggets? Like, it seems like they're still on the thing that this is a guard driven league. It's like, dude, we've only had one true center taken. I know Victor is a center, but I think he's more of that positionless type center than a true rim protector. But they've really only had one real rim protector taken at this point. So they should have their pick of forwards and big men. I'm still trying to get this big board up here for me.
Yeah,
so I can see who's left.
And like you mentioned,
real quick.
Really the last forward that was picked was Grady Dick by Toronto, and he's listed as a guard forward, so he could probably play that, hover around that 2-3 type of position, and as we kind of still put numbers with this. But the last forward that was taken was actually Utah's first pick at number 9, Taylor Hendricks out of UCF. The only, I guess, true center that's listed that was taken was Victor. So that's what you have. And I don't know if it's unfortunate for the Nuggets, but the Spurs are in the Western Conference.
Right. So let's see. Yeah, because Cam is he's a small forward. Cam Whitmore's still on the board, isn't he? I want to make sure.
Yeah, he's still out there. But like you said, this run on guards, Keontae George, guard, Kobe Buffkin, guard, Jordan Hawkins, guard, Grady Dick, guard forward. That's not true. Excuse me. The last true center that was taken was actually Derek Lively, the second. He was drafted by the Thunder and was just traded to Dallas. So it was part of that swap pick, trade pick here on draft night. So that was the last, I guess, true center that was taken was Lively. And now he is on the Dallas Mavericks.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's kind of surprising that Cam Whitmore's still out there. He was number 5 on a couple of big boards, like including CBS. I just double checked to make sure I wasn't tripping, that I didn't see him somewhere up there in the top 5 on somewhere. But yeah, CBS and a couple other places had him in the top 5. So I think this would be a perfect place for somebody like him to go.
Yeah,
Especially him
and
falling
that
so
would,
far.
yeah, that would be, because the Lakers need that size. And I think I mentioned this too heading into the series against the Lakers for the Denver Nuggets, and that was if I was Anthony Davis, who is obviously an amazing player, amazing defender. When he wants to show up and play offense, he's pretty dang good. But I would imagine that he would have had a chip on his shoulder, Daniel, because everything that was said, heading into that series, obviously they compared to the bubble teams, and there was only 3 players on the Nuggets on that bubble team who were on this team, and that was Joker, Murray, and Chanchar. How about that? The only 3 remaining Nuggets
Wow.
on that bubble team, and there was only 2 on the Lakers, and that was LeBron and AD. Those were the only 2 guys left from the bubble team that won the championship. And you can include KCP, who was on the Lakers at that time, now on the Nuggets.
Right.
He was in that series as well. And here's the Lakers pick. Well, the string of guards continued. Jalen Hood-Schifino, the guard out of Indiana, was taken by the Lakers. So
Wow.
again, we mentioned D'Angelo Russell had a terrible Western Conference Finals. We mentioned Dennis Schroeder, who played a lot of minutes for defensive purposes. I guess they're thinking that Anthony Davis is still well equipped to guard Nikola Jokic in the Western Conference, but a guard, that's. I mean, I guess they need a guard because obviously Schroeder and D'Lo coming back are up in the air. But I mean, are they banking on AD being able to stop Jokic at this point? That's what kind of tells me that.
Yeah, I think they're just banking on him going back to the form he showed in the first couple rounds of the playoffs, where he was elite defensive AD. I guess they're hoping that he shows up with that throughout the regular season, which we have never seen in Anthony Davis's career, not New Orleans or LA. He always seems to really turn it on in the playoffs when it comes to defensively. He's always a scorer. He's always a dangerous scorer, but his defense is never at the same level it is in the playoffs. So for them to try and bank on that to maybe move up in the seeding and not end up, or possibly wrestling something away from Denver, this is not the way to do it. And this run on guards is insane. Like, did nobody pay attention to how the Nuggets use their size and athleticism against the small ball of the Heat and just absolutely outworked them on the glass every game? Like, as much as we were just sitting here talking about a copycat league, it's like, oh, it's just Denver, so we can't copy them. They're just a cow town. Like, I don't get it. What is going on here?
I honestly don't know, and that's going to be the challenge for all of these teams. Daniel, is how they're going to keep pace with the Denver Nuggets, and that's going to be the biggest challenge, the biggest struggle for all these teams. Is now the Miami Heat, who we just saw a lot of the last couple of weeks, are now on the clock with the 18th pick. So we're 13 picks away from wrapping this one up. Warriors, Rockets, Nets have back-to-back picks at 21 and 22, and then Portland at 23. So for the Heat, there was talks that they're trying to lure Damian Lillard there. They were kind of wanted in on some of these other trades. They wanted Bradley Beal there, and
Yes.
they just didn't
They
get
were
it.
hot on Beal.
Yeah, and no pun intended, but they were hot on Beal, and I thought Beal would have been a better fit in Miami personally, because Phoenix they just want big names and zero depth apparently. Because I still don't see Phoenix beating the Nuggets in a 7-game series, even with sure you're going to get more scoring, but just like Boston, just like Miami, live and die by the 3-pointer. That's what all these teams to me seem to be banking on. So the Miami Heat, what their needs what do you see their needs kind of be? I don't know how long Kyle Lowry has left. We kind of saw him, I don't want to say taper off, but we kind of saw the the grind of a playoff run kind of get to him, and he was playing on a bum ankle anyway. So we'll see what happens there. I mean, maybe a guard. Maybe a big forward to go along with Jimmy and Bam. I don't know. This is gonna be an interesting pick for Miami.
Yeah, and I know I said it on the last pick, but I think Cam Whitmore is an absolute perfect fit in Miami. So if he goes past here, I don't know what's going on. If there's another guard, I might lose my mind. Like, big guys matter. Like, I know I might sound biased being a big guy, but we matter, dang it. Even in basketball, we still matter. So to sit there and have the NBA watch the finals that the rest of us watched and seemingly not get any of what was happening is beyond me. It's like, you would think that a bunch of really smart basketball guys that are there at the draft would have watched and seen what happened, what transpired. And as we're speaking of Cam Whitmore, they just brought him up on the screen about how he's falling so far. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's got maybe an injury issue that we don't know of. Is there a character concern that's had him drop? But to me, I say keep dropping, because if he drops all the way to Denver and the NBA continues to let Denver absolutely fleece them in the draft, I mean, why not at this point? They just seem to be the ones that just are the catch-all for all the guys that teams overthink. And I think that's what they're doing with Cam Whitmore, is they're overthinking things and he's dropping. A lot like what happened with MPJ, and the list goes on. Bol, all these guys that they were able to grab way later than what they were supposed to. And they just take their time, they have the patience, and they develop these guys into something great. I think we'll see it again with Christian Braun and Peyton Watson from last year. And hey, if they want to let a guy like Cam Whitmore go down and extend this championship window for Denver, why not let them? I don't have an answer at this point. If he falls past Miami, Miami should have been running to the podium with this guy. He would add so much size and physicality that they needed and need. It makes no sense of why he's still sitting on the board at this point.
Yeah, and he did not look amused to be passed up all of these times as they just showed him, like you mentioned. The pick is in for Miami, so we'll see what they do. Yeah, I mean, everyone's just kind of played catch up with the Nuggets right now, as you mentioned. Dating back to last year's draft, they struck gold with Christian Braun, who played well in the playoffs. Maybe not in the Western Conference Finals. Maybe that series just wasn't for him. But we saw him go off in game 3 or 4 down in Miami, as they're showing the Miami guards right now under contract. Gabe Vincent, Caleb Martin, Max Strus, and Duncan Robinson. I kind of see Max Strus more of a 3, more of a smaller forward, but they have him listed, I guess, as a guard. Yeah. But that's their guards under contract right now. I don't know where Kyle Lowry fits into that puzzle going forward, but eventually you're going to have to look towards the future. Kyle Lowry is not going to be around for much longer.
He's pushing 40, man. There's only so many miles your knees can take, especially in a game like the NBA, where you're just everything's about being explosive. But pick is in. Silver's coming up.
Just missed it, but Jamie, was it Jaime? Yeah, I don't know. Junior.
Wow.
Out of UCLA.
Jaime Jacques Jr.
Jaime Jacques Jr. out of UCLA, the forward. So kind of close. Said they needed a forward to go along with Bam and Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, definitely better than a guard. Let me get his exact measurables here. I think he might actually be a little bigger than Cam Whitmore, if I remember correctly. Oh, they're about the same size. They're both about 6'7", 220, 230. So, yeah, I guess very comparable in size. I think Jacques is a little bit better defender than Whitmore. Maybe that's why they chose him, because that is what Miami is all about. They're about playing defense and just wearing you down. Again, it didn't work in the finals when it mattered most. So I guess if you want to double down on what didn't work and keep beating your head up against the same thing and expecting a different result, then I guess have the Albert Einstein Award. I don't know what else to say on that. I mean, I guess he does give him a little bit more size and all that, but I still don't think he's quite the player they needed. but also Miami's done a really good job with the players they've drafted. So who am I to say that it was a terrible pick? And I mean, he's also listed as a guard on ESPN. So I don't know if he's a guard forward. So I guess you could technically say that they went back to guards. I don't know, man. It seems like the NBA is sold on it being a guard driven league, and they are refusing to acknowledge the fact that a big man just led his team to the championship for the first time since Shaq.
Yeah, and it's like you mentioned, at least it wasn't a guard because we went on a string of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guards in a row. And again, I guess Grady Dick, you throw an asterisk because he is listed as a guard forward, can play that 2-3, kind of that tweener type of guy. So another forward picking, once again, Jaime Jaquez, I don't know how to say it. Well, I'm just going to say Jaime or Triple J, whatever. Out of UCLA, yeah, 6'6", like you mentioned, 226, kind of that big body that Miami, because you're going to have to replace Kevin Love. You're going to have to replace guys like that who, I was going to say Udonis Haslem, but for wasting a roster spot as much as Miami did for the last couple of years has just been crazy. Again, I mentioned the life of Zion Williamson. The life of Udonis Haslem, just wear a hoodie for the last couple of years and get paid millions of dollars to sit at the end of the bench was absolutely good on him. Good on
loyalty is all the power to him. Loyalty is crazy, man.
Yeah. So obviously this was his last season. Good to see the Nuggets, have him take the L on the way out. So there you go. By the way, is Jaime's mom going to be the new Zach Wilson mom as she's sitting on the couch with Jaime?
Did you see who was it? It was earlier today. It was whose mom was it? It was but dude, she had the bosoms out and everything. So I don't know, her and her might be 1-1. I forget who it was. I gotta remember who it was. But her and the other mom from earlier, like she had on the smallest little one-piece white dress and everything was out. So there might be a couple going for that honor. So, yeah, we've seen some interesting things both from the players and their mothers so far in this draft.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, Whitmore's still on the board, the guy from Villanova. The Warriors are now on the clock. Warriors are going to be interesting too. The new GM, Mike Dunleavy Jr., came out a couple days ago and said Jordan Poole is going to be with us for at least the next 4 years. Literally days later, he gets traded to a place where, again, maybe careers go to die in Washington, but we'll see what Jordan Poole does. I mean, even Draymond, who declined his option earlier in the week, came out and said, "I don't really want to go to the Warriors if Poole, without saying as much words, going back to the Warriors if Poole's going to be there." And so, what does Dunleavy do? Trades Jordan Poole, and that tension was kind of building all season since Draymond throat punched him in a practice or whatever. So it was kind of awkward there. And, they get Chris Paul. How is that going to work with Steph Curry? What do you make of the Warriors heading into this draft pick? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, it's another one of those head scratchers. It's like, okay, yeah, obviously CP3 is ring chasing. That's why he's there. You got to have him coming off the bench, right? And then to give up a guy like Jordan Poole, like, yeah, I understand that him and Draymond had beef, but I don't see how you keep the old man that just opted out of his contract that you're going to resign because you really don't have a guy to replace him, and then you get rid of the young guy that was supposed to be the future of your franchise that just helped guide you to a championship more than Draymond.
Yeah, so the Warriors get well. Here's another guard, and they're just gonna stockpile guards apparently on the Warriors. So I'm not even I'm not even gonna attempt to pronounce his last name, but the guard out of Santa Clara, we'll call him Brandon for now. 6'5", 204. Again, how is Chris Paul going to figure into this with Steph Curry? Do they move Steph Curry to the 2? I mean, this is just a bunch of questions that the Warriors have to deal with, and it's going to be interesting to see. I think that Steve Kerr, can he manage? Can he manage? You know this team now, and if Draymond doesn't come back, they're going to have a even more interesting situation on their hands because of not only his veteran presence, that I guess championship pedigree, if you want to call it that. But then they don't have to deal with the headache, I guess, of is Draymond going to lose his cool and throat punch another guy or kick another guy in the nuts and get suspended? I mean, is that going to happen? So it this Warriors team again now, yeah, now a year removed from a season removed from winning the title, and Jordan Poole was a big part of that title run last season. And this season in the playoffs only averaged 11 points per game. Absolutely disappeared in that series for the Lakers. You didn't even really see him on the court that much towards the end of that series. So this is going to be a very key part of trying to keep this together as another blonde mom is on the couch in the NBA draft. And Daniel, I think your microphone may have died. Can't hear you. So we are waiting now. On the clock is Houston. Houston will have another pick in this first round. This will be their second pick as they are on the clock, and then we'll wait for back-to-back Brooklyn Nets picks. They're at 21 and 22 as we are 11 picks away from wrapping up this draft, as Daniel went to go grab batteries for his mic. But yeah, I mean, this is just crazy to think that Chris Paul's added, and like Daniel mentioned, ring chasing, whatever that James Harden wants to do. Is he going to be ring chasing? He's going to stay with the Philadelphia 76ers, play alongside Joel Embiid. These are the questions that are going to be interesting for a lot of these veteran guards who don't have a championship yet. Are they going to take bags, just like we learned from Bruce Brown, who opted out of his deal with Denver? Is he going to be chasing a bag now that he got his ring? That's the questions that we have to wait for answers. So as we await the pick for the Houston Rockets, just to give you a round out, another guard that was taken last pick from UCLA. We await Brooklyn, has back-to-back picks like we mentioned. Portland coming up here at number 23, Sacramento at 24, Memphis at 25, Indiana at 26, Charlotte with their second pick in this first round at number 27, Utah with their third pick at number 28, Denver, who traded in the first round yesterday, kind of swapped some picks with Indiana, and then the LA Clippers will round out the first round at pick number 30. So that's what we're waiting for right now. Houston is on the clock as ESPN takes a timeout. We will take a quick breather as well right here on Elevation 5280 Sports and Lifestyle. All right, and welcome back into Elevation 5280 Sports Live Draft Special as Houston is on the clock. So there goes Cam Whitmore, the guy that you have been wondering why has been waiting so long. Forward out of Villanova, and I like this pick for Houston. As we mentioned, young core. They're going to be young for a while. They're going to be rebuilding for a while, but this is a nice piece to add into that structure.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, good size, good athleticism, and he's going to have a chip on his shoulder. He's a kid that was expecting to be a lottery pick and lasted all the way down to pick 20. So he's going to have that proverbial chip on his shoulder coming in to a team that's got a bunch of kids that are all going to be looking to prove themselves. So I think it's one of the better locations for him to end up at, somewhere he can learn, grow on a team with very low expectations, and get him. And he doesn't have to be the guy coming straight out of college there. So a very, very talented kid that went way too late, and Houston got themselves a good one all the way down at 20.
Yeah, I don't want to say maybe steal of the draft, but definitely falling right into Houston's lap. I don't think Houston was expecting Whitmore, like you said,
Yeah.
number 5 on a lot of people's boards after the kind of the bigger names towards the beginning of the draft. After the obviously Victor Wembanyama's, after the Scoot Hendersons. Maybe after the Thompson twins. It's like I said, I like this pick for Houston, and I wouldn't be surprised if they shocked a couple people and kind of made it to that play-in tournament. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I still think they're a couple years away from making a serious run. Obviously, I think they were even the youngest team in the NBA last season, so they're just adding to that young core, like we mentioned. So, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of maybe not at the end of the season, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were kind of right there at the play-in tournament at some point during the season.
Yeah, it would not be a terrible surprise if they were able to turn it around quickly, and get with all the. Wow, my brain's just completely dying on me. Sorry, guys. I'm gonna get it together. But yes, all the pieces they're putting together, I think that they mesh well. They can definitely make a much quicker turnaround than people are expecting at this point. That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. The new, I almost said the New Jersey Nets. And it's been years since that was even a thing. The Brooklyn Nets have back-to-back picks here at 21 and 22. Brooklyn's another one of those teams, Daniel, that were just, I don't want to say a mess, because they were able to get, they were able to get Bridges and Cam over to Brooklyn, and they made they were the only team to get swept in that first round by the Philadelphia 76ers, but it didn't feel like a sweep for some reason. For whatever reason it is, and I feel bad for Brooklyn going through the Hardens and the Durants, who cried their way off a team. And
Yes.
and say what you will about Kyrie, I just they didn't think that the earth was flat either, so they wanted him off the team. And they got rid of 3 guys who, as good as they are on the court, just don't mesh well together. And we saw that chemistry has been a big theme, it seems like, when we're talking about these teams. And
Yes.
Chemistry was definitely a big issue. We didn't see much of Kevin Durant in his tenure for Brooklyn. James Harden, would say what you will about the beard, he was just kind of all over the place. Kyrie missed a bunch of time. Brooklyn going forward, I don't want to say they're trending down. I want to say they're just kind of staying parallel. And depending who they draft here, maybe puts them over the edge, maybe make a key free agent signing. But where do you place Brooklyn now? After going through what they did with KD at the trade deadline, sending him to Phoenix, got a bunch of pieces back. Where do you place Brooklyn now? Because they're kind of those tweener teams too. You're like, man, they could be middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference, but I wouldn't be surprised if they fell short of the playoffs next season.
I mean, the fact that they were able to jettison KD, Kyrie, and James all in the same season and still make the playoffs bodes well for their future. I'm not going to sit here and say that they're going to come out and blow the doors off of things this upcoming season, but if they, add a couple of nice pieces in free agency, maybe do a couple of things here in the draft with these back-to-back picks, I think they could make some noise and surprise some people. I think they could actually just get into the playoffs and skip the play-in altogether if everything falls right. But again, that's going to be every piece falling in place perfectly for that to happen. I think they're more likely to be somewhere in the range they were now this past season, somewhere around 500, maybe sneaking into the play-in. But they might need a year or two of seasoning and building that chemistry. We've been beating that dead horse all day. I think we're probably going to do it for the rest of the evening as well. But yeah, building that chemistry, building that team, building that family. It's going to take time, especially after all the turmoil that they just went through. I think they did a lot of addition by subtraction by getting rid of that Cerberus of agony, I guess is the best way I can put it, with that three-headed monster that they had up there in Brooklyn. I think they made the right choices. They made the best deals that they could make, got a haul in return for all of those guys. I honestly think they got more than any of us expected to, considering how bad each one of those guys wanted out and how desperate Brooklyn was to get rid of them. The fact they were able to get back any type of a haul, let alone the one that they got, really bodes well for their future. And as long as, like I said before, you get the picks is fine, but you got to hit on them, you got to develop them. So if they hit on them and they develop them, this turnaround could be pretty quick, and we could be talking about Brooklyn Nets in the way that we thought we were with KD, Kyrie, and James here in a year or two with Cam and whatever else that they build around him and what they have on the roster right now.
Yeah, and you're gonna miss on draft picks. That just comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Ask Denver Nuggets how they thought about Shkidishvili over Vince Carter, or
right,
or Rafe LaFrentz over Amari Stoudemire. Those are the kind of the ones that you're just like, drafting Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell and trading them on draft nights. Yes. This is one of the more balanced trades maybe in NBA history. A lot of people forget that Dallas drafted Trae Young and Atlanta drafted Luka, and they were traded for one another on draft night. So,
right.
A lot of these careers are made on draft night. Here's Adam Silver for the first of back-to-back for the Nets. So the second Crimson Tide to be selected in this first round, Noah Clowney, the forward from Alabama, goes number 21 to the Brooklyn Nets. And we kind of mentioned, I want to say their roster is kind of scrambled, but it was kind of left in pieces when KD and Harden and Kyrie left. They were just, I don't want to say scrambling to see what they had and see what they got, because they did make a playoff run. Again, they got swept, but maybe with this pick, maybe the trending arrow will go up in that right direction. But, I still place Brooklyn in the middle of the pack when it comes to maybe playoff teams, maybe trending towards a play-in type of team at this point. But again, is Cam Johnson going to come back? I think he's one of the guys who, obviously one of the pieces they got back in the KD trade with Phoenix. But is he going to come back? There was talk that I think he's a free agent. I think his contract was expiring or something weird with his contract. Again, zero research, all reaction. That's my mantra. I'm sticking with it. But yeah, I mean, where do you place? I think I've already asked you this, but Brooklyn's just kind of one of those tweener teams, and now they have back-to-back picks. Noah Clowney was a 2023 all SEC player last season. So, as you mentioned, not all of these picks are going to be home runs.
Yeah, no, exactly. And going on the Cam Johnson, just go get hit on some research here, because I am a bit of a research guy. 22-23, he had a club option that was exercised. This offseason, he is a restricted free agent, and they have given him the qualifying offer of just under $8.5 million. So really, as long as he accepts the contract and all that with the restricted free agency, they're good to go. So more than likely, he's coming back unless somebody can. I think there's like a weird way that teams can come in and steal an RFA in the NBA. I don't know exactly. That's where my research ends. I don't know how that exactly works, but I know there's some weird way that he might end up somewhere else, but it's very highly unlikely.
Well,
But
you know,
as far as putting the Brooklyn Nets, like I said before, I see him as like a 500 team, maybe sneaking in as a play-in team, but nothing really much more than that. I think they're going to need a couple of years to gel and develop a lot of these picks they're going to make.
so was it? So I guess was it? Were they put in position where they were able to, you know, kind of stay in that playoff realm? Was it the contributions of Kyrie and KD that got him maybe in that position? Or I mean, what was it? How did I mean, because if you trade KD before the season, if you don't have them even halfway through that season, does Brooklyn even make the playoffs without KD and or Kyrie to maybe put them in the position where they were that team that got swept by Philadelphia?
I mean, I think there's some modicum of that being the case. Can you say that they would definitely be the same team or as good without those players? I mean, they are all great players in their own right. So to sit here and just flat out say like, hey, yeah, they would have the same record. They'd still make it to the playoffs. I don't think you can say that. I think there is going to be a differentiation. That's why I'm saying more like in around 500, more likely under 500, but they could be around and maybe sneak in. But I don't have the hopes that this is a true playoff contender that would even make any noise if they got into the play-in tournament, let alone any other way. So, yeah, I don't see them as being anything that you're going to want to write home to mama about and be like, hey, watch these Nets. But I think they'll surprise a few folks and be a little bit better than what people expect them to be.
Yeah, you would hope so, as we are about a minute and a half away from the Nets' second of back-to-back picks here at number 21 and number 22. And then Portland, Portland will have their second pick of this first round. And Scoot Henderson was their first pick out of the G League Ignite. And a lot of people were expecting Charlotte to select Scoot Henderson with that number 2 overall pick, but he kind of fell into the lap of the Trailblazers. We mentioned maybe Dame will be happy about it. It's kind of hard to read Dame time at this point because of, you brought up loyalty a little bit earlier. He's showing a bunch of loyalty to Portland and really getting nothing in return. Yes. We've seen teams, you need that big 2. Obviously teams are doing the big 3, maybe the OG big 3, whether you believe it was Bosh, Wade, and LeBron in Miami, or was it Garnett and Ray Allen and Paul Pierce in Boston. Many debate who was the OG big 3, but a lot of teams need that big 3 now. And I think the Nuggets proved, well, at least a little bit, that they have a big 2 and, a little smaller 3s and 4s and whatever. But Dame is kind of by himself in Portland, which is a lot, kind of that spark of frustration for Dame.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that. The amount of loyalty that man has shown to a franchise that has done nothing but milk him and his talent to make money, and at this point, it's just got to be absolute refusal to build around him. You cannot convince me. I don't care that it's Portland. I know it's a terrible town with terrible weather in a terrible location, but if you got Dame, you should be able to attract free agents if you're trying. I don't see how Portland has been unable to attract anybody, whether it's via free agency or trade, to come and play with Dame. Like, how do you not want to play with a guy like that is going to ride or die for you every game? He's going to put every minute that he can on the floor. I cannot fathom that they are trying and not being able to bring anybody in. I don't care what city it is. I don't care where it's located. If you got a guy like Dame, you should be able to attract talent. And all you have to do is try.
Yeah, and, I guess maybe a piece that they still have there is Jusuf Nurkic, but he missed a lot of time last season with the injury, so that's kind of up in the air. Who can they bring in to help Dame out is a big, big question, as the pick is in number 22 overall for the Brooklyn Nets as Adam Silver stepping to the podium. Dariq Whitehead, another guard, Daniel, taken off the board from Duke. So we have a string of a bunch of State's college kids, and maybe that's what we'll see for the last 7 picks or so. As once again, Dariq Whitehead, guard out of Duke, goes to Brooklyn. Now we kind of mentioned maybe Brooklyn is in that tweener spot. Are they a play-in team? Are they a playoff team? Are they missing the playoffs this season? And we mentioned kind of the mess that was this year for Brooklyn, Daniel. I even forgot that, the whole mess with Steve Nash in and out as head coach maybe mess with a lot of people within that organization. So hopefully they're on the right path. I don't know how much, Jay-Z has to do with any of this, but, some dirt off their shoulders could really help them right now.
Hey, he's an owner, so I mean he's got to at least help get some of that dirt off the shoulders at this point, especially considering he was the architect of the big 3 that they brought in there as well. But with Whitehead and Whitmore, these 2 guys I do believe are going to be the steals of the draft. Whitehead, he would have been a lottery pick if not for the injury that he sustained last season. And again, Whitmore, that's beyond me of how he felt. I have not heard anything that would suggest him falling that way, not by injury, personality, whatever. So these 2 guys, I think, are going to be the steals of the draft. Whitehead maybe even more than Whitmore, because Whitehead had serious top 3 talent before that injury. So it's all going to be about how he heals, a lot in the ilk of like a Michael Porter Jr. back in the day for the Nuggets. So I think he could be that type of a steal at this point. Maybe that's going to be what Brooklyn needs to get themselves to where they thought they were going to be with the big 3 they just had.
Now we await the 23rd overall pick, Portland's second pick in this first round. About 3 minutes to go for their selection. We mentioned Scoot Henderson kind of fell into their laps with the 3rd overall pick. Is Charlotte going to be kicking themselves for not drafting Scoot? And this coming, how about this? This coming a week after Michael Jordan sells his majority stake in the franchise.
Yeah. I think Miller and Scoot, they were pretty close, but I did like Scoot better because I like his personality better. He seems to have that kind of it factor. Miller just seems to be that boisterous, rambunctious, typical teenager with a lot of talent and always being told that he was the greatest and the best and never really facing adversity. Those types of guys give me pause to pick, especially high in drafts. Those are the guys you usually want to fall and give them the chip on their shoulder so that they have some type of a motive to be better than what they were. So him ended up going over Scoot was a bit of a surprise, and I think that might come back to bite them in the ilk of like a Kemba Walker or something like that. It just seems to follow the Hornets around. Even now, after Jordan has sold the team, it seems like they've made another one of those potential mistakes. I could be wrong. Miller might turn out to be an otherworldly player, but to me, with my dollar, my job on the line, I'm taking Scoot.
Yeah, I think you probably speak for a lot of people who are going to go in that direction. Once again, we await the pick of the Portland Trailblazers. Who are they going to pair up with Dame? Are these draft picks going to – obviously Scoot's going to get – probably is going to be a starter for this Portland Trailblazers team. But who else can they bring in to help Dame out has been the question. Not only this season, Daniel, but seasons in the past. You know, they've experimented with a couple of things. Carmelo was even on a team a few years ago. You know, this team, it seems like they haven't been themselves since the Nuggets bounced them a few years ago in the playoffs. You know, and then the Nuggets are in the business of getting coaches fired. We saw Monty Williams get fired from Phoenix. We saw Scott Skiles that year that the Nuggets bounced Portland. He got fired from his Portland job. So when here's Portland on the clock. So a forward off the board, Chris Murray from Iowa goes to Portland at the number 23rd overall pick. So a forward drafted by Portland. So they get a guard and Scoot and a forward here for the Trailblazers. And again, Dame's going to get most of your minutes at the guard. Who are they going to pair up with him in the back or in the front court is the question. So the Portland Trailblazers, they get Chris Murray from Iowa. Had a pretty decent last season for the Hawkeyes, almost just over 20 points per game, 48 from the field, and almost 8 rebounds as a guard. And that's pretty good for a guard to get 8 rebounds a game.
Yeah, most definitely. And he's a little bit of a tweener. He's got a little bit of size for a guard, but it's kind of what you need in the NBA. This is the first real pick I've seen that a team seems to be wanting to get a little bigger, so that way they can get beefier and start playing with a team like the Nuggets. Seems like everybody else is still trying to play against the Warriors, like they're the ones that won the championship last year instead of the Nuggets. But this is one I do like. I like the addition of size, defense, and all that. But how about that for a team need? I'm sorry, I got to point this out, but at the bottom of the ESPN scroll, the team need was defensive identity. That's a team need in the draft. You can assign that in the draft. Like, what was that?
Can you draft an identity? Is that a thing?
That's what I'm saying. Like, how is that a team need? I mean,
if you can
be a little bit more specific.
Right. And I don't know, like we mentioned, the rebounds, that's not defensive. So it's almost like fantasy football draft. You're able to draft an entire defense. Maybe that's what Portland was going for when it came to defensive identity. But you can't draft I mean, I guess you can draft players to add to an identity, but I don't know how much. Yeah, I don't know how much this pick was towards that defensive identity.
Yeah, no, definitely not going to get you an identity. And like you said, there's no defensive / special teams that you can get in the NBA draft. So I don't know what that was from ESPN, but I guess they also did prove in the NBA Finals they don't exactly do much research on any team that's not LA or New York based. So there's that as well.
Yeah. So
I'm just like, we don't know what's going on. Defensive identity. That sounds good.
Yeah, just put a category up there instead of getting a little bit more specific. As the Sacramento Kings are on the clock, their pick is in. So we'll head to the podium here in a second. Kings are one of those teams, Matt. We thought, man, they're going to make a deep playoff run, and they did. They made it to the second round. Eventually, fell to the Los Angeles Lakers, but they put up a good fight. They're well coached. Mike Brown is the head coach, one coach of the year, excellent head coach. They got some really good young pieces, and we always touch on that young core. How long is this going to last? Are the Kings trending in that direction of, kind of that Nuggets category? They finished at 48-34 last season, first appearance in almost 20 years. So this is going to be interesting for Sacramento. That's a little bit more specific. Their team needs are a shot blocker and a point guard.
Yeah, a little bit more specific, but yeah, I guess ESPN is just phoning it in. Maybe they're letting Kendrick Perkins handle the graphics. I don't know. But when it comes to Sacramento, I do think they are a team trending up. They got a good coach. They got a really good core. I think they did show their youth as the season progressed. They started off really hot. They kind of cooled down, then they got hot again. They just never really got that consistency. A lot, like you said, the Nuggets in their early throes of becoming a championship contender. I think they got a great core. They got a great coach, and they're one of the few teams I can look at and see that they're building in a similar way to Denver. They got a nice young core with a good coach that they're allowing to grow and build together. So right now, it's just about building around that core. If they can do that, they can continue that upward trend. But it all depends on whether or not they're hitting on these picks and making good moves in free agency, as always. As long as they do that, I see nothing but the sky is the limit for this Sacramento Kings team.
Well, they just picked a forward out of Marquette, Oliver Max and Prosper. That's what I'm going to go with. Out of Marquette, another a forward. So, and kind of convenient, just like Grady Dick a little bit ago. Nice purple suit to go with the Purple Kings.
Right? Yeah, it seems to be a trend here all of a sudden is players somehow magically wearing the color of their future team. Um, it's funny how that seems to work out, but it always seems to be every draft. There's a couple of guys that just tend to be wearing, whether it's because they knew beforehand or they just got lucky. I don't think we'll ever really know, but it seems to work out. And yeah, Olivier Maxence Prosper, 6'8", 230-pound guard, born in Montreal. Forward, not guard. I do apologize. But as last season, he averaged 12.5 points, 4.7 rebounds. Is much more of an in the paint kind of guy. So he's a guy that's going to work more, a lot closer to the rim, as he only hit 33% from three and only hit 73% from free throws. So it's all about him getting in the paint. If he can maybe get some length to it, maybe he can become a starter. But this looks more of like a rotational piece that they're trying to build around, again, that young core that they already have.
And I just saw a trade come across the screen, and we'll wait to it refreshes. But the Memphis Grizzlies are not on the clock. They were part of that trade yesterday, Daniel, that they were able to acquire Marcus Smart in a 3-team deal with the Celtics and the Wizards. Pretty good move for them. Ja Morant's going to be suspended for the first 25 games of the regular season. You just traded away Tyus Jones, your backup point guard. I heard a lot of talk of who's going to play point guard, Smart or Ja Morant. I do see Marcus Smart as more of a number 2 anyway, a shooting guard anyway. So he kind of fits that role. You know, a couple years removed from Defensive Player of the Year. So Memphis,
Right.
They almost got a steal in this trade. So, you know, Memphis was kind of that team that was chasing the Nuggets all season in that second slot, that second seed, and they weren't able to catch up with them all season long. You know, Memphis fell to the Lakers in the second round of the playoffs. The whole Dylan Brooks thing, you know, kind of, I don't know if that made angst a bunch of team, but they're just a bunch of young guys. Steven Adams was out towards the latter half of that season, so you didn't have that veteran presence in the lineup to kind of corral these young kids. Obviously, Ja Morant's, you know, just flashing guns everywhere he goes. So they need something. They need maybe a Marcus Smart, to a veteran guy, you know, a gritty guy to get into that locker room and almost set these young kids straight.
Yeah. I think that was the key to them going after Marcus Smart. After the whole debacle happened with the first trade falling apart, Memphis jumped in because they smelled blood in the water. They saw that the Celtics were essentially desperate to get a guy like Kristaps Porzingis, and they really kind of, like you said, they fleeced them in a way of being able to snatch up Marcus Smart in the way that they did, and he's going to be that calming presence. Like the memes have already started, obviously. Like one of the funnier ones is people talking about this is going to be Marcus Smart's veteran energy in Memphis, and it's the video from back in the day of Michael Jackson with the dude with the gun, where Michael just slowly lowers it. I was just like, y'all is too much. The internet is undefeated. That's all I can say on that one. But yeah, if he can stop Ja Morant from just holding guns dumb on Instagram, then I think the trade is an absolute win for Memphis. If he can just do that, if he does anything else he does is an absolute bonus. But if he can just get Ja Morant's head on straight, and I think he's that type of veteran presence, and he actually grew up about that life. You know what I'm saying? So he can actually talk to Ja Morant on a level that a lot of other guys can't, that Ja Morant can't deny. So I think it was a win-win in all phases for Memphis. Boston, I think, is going to be the one at the end holding the bag in the rain when all things are said and done. So Memphis, good on you for going out there, targeting a guy that you knew was going to help your team in more ways than just on the court, and still able to sit out here and take a pick at 25, even though you had to go out and get a guy like Marcus Smart. They did a really good job on that trade.
Yeah, and they have a pretty good foundation as well with Ja Morant, if he can kind of get his head on straight, you know, with Jaren Jackson Jr. So now you have the last 2 defensive players of the year in your starting 5. How about that?
Yeah. And defense wins championships. I mean, that's something that I think everybody screamed and across every spectrum of sports. Like as much as exciting as offense is, it's defense that wins championships. It doesn't matter how many points you score if you can't stop the other guy from scoring. And I think that's where Memphis is going.
Yeah. And we are awaiting the pick of the Memphis Grizzlies. The ESPN went to timeout, so we'll get that pick when they return. Do you think Memphis is still how much? Obviously, John Morant out of their lineup for the first 25 games is a huge hit to them. I mean, can they tread water without him? Again, you trade Tyus Jones, who was your backup point guard. Can they tread water until Ja gets back, especially with it seems to be, for Phoenix did get better with the acquisition. That was a regular season trade. Getting Chris Paul to the Warriors was a regular season move because we saw Chris Paul get injured in the playoffs again. Nothing new there, right? So,
yeah, right.
So can you see Memphis treading water without Ja for 25 games?
I mean, it depends on your viewpoint of treading water. If you're talking about treading water is somewhere around 500, yes. If treading water is anything above that, probably not. I don't think they have enough scoring. Like they obviously have enough defense. That's obvious. But without Ja and just the energy he brings and the opportunities he brings for his teammates with the double and triple teams that he draws at times, it leaves those other guys out there, the Desmond Baines and that wide open for those threes in the corner and all of that. So they don't really have another guy that can do that. So it's going to be a much harder grind for them. So staying at the top of the conference, no. Staying in the middle of the conference, yeah, they got enough talent to do that, but nothing really more than just like you said, tread water at about 500.
So Memphis made the 25th pick overall in this first round. They picked Marcus Sasser, guard out of Houston. So maybe that's your answer. Maybe there's your starting point guard until Ja gets back from suspension. So maybe your starting lineup, Sasser, Marcus Smart, Jaren Jackson Jr. is in there. What are they going to do with that power forward position with Dillon Brooks, and his impending free agency? So they have a couple of positions that's still in question, but maybe Sasser now is your stopgap until Ja returns from suspension.
Yeah, I think Sasser's more of a Jones replacement than a Ja replacement. I think Marcus will take the point for the first 25 games as a starter. I mean, obviously Sasser could surprise everybody and sneak his way in if he just comes and balls out in the preseason. But to me, I see Marcus Smart being that veteran presence that's going to hold down the fort until Ja gets back, and then he'll relinquish that role once Ja's back in the starting lineup.
Yeah, for sure. Do you see any scenario where this is just a big hypothetical, but do you see any situation, and I kind of touched on it with Zion, do you see any situation if Sasser, averages 25 points per game in the 25 games that he's starting for Ja, and Ja just can't seem to get his head right? Do you see any scenario where Memphis is just going to be sick of Ja's antics off the court?
I think it's going to be up to Ja. I mean, obviously it's going to take Sasser playing out of his mind and, like you said, averaging 25, 30 points a game for them to even consider it. But it's going to really depend on how Ja reacts to this suspension. Obviously, the last suspension didn't get it through his head. So if he comes back and he reverts right back to the headache that he was, just like with Kyrie and every one of these other troubled stars, eventually your headache outgrows your talent and it ends your welcome. So can Ja work his way out of Memphis? Absolutely. We've seen it time and time again with all these talented athletes that just think that they're above the league, that they are above their team, and they just sabotage themselves. So can he do it? Yes. Is it likely? I don't think so. I think with the father that he has in his life, he's gonna come back. He's gonna come back better, and he's gonna figure it out. That's what I believe, and I want to believe, because I believe in Ja. I believe in his talent, and I believe that the league is better with Ja Morant in it than not. So I want every fiber of my being wants him to come back and be better. Will he? It's up in the air. He's already proven that one time he didn't learn. So what's to say that he will the second time? We're just going to have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, it was kind of a weird, I guess, sabbatical for Ja when that first suspension came. Went down to Florida and did whatever.
Right.
I don't know what he did in Florida, but apparently went to some health clinic. I'm assuming mental health clinic, but yeah, that's going to be the question for Ja. Is it up to him to further his career, or maybe it'll be a move to shake it up? Maybe him not playing basketball will finally waken him up. Did you think that 25 games was too light, too heavy, or just about right for that suspension?
The fact that he didn't learn the first time, I would have liked to have seen a half season suspension just to really knock it home. Like, I think 25 games it's okay. I do think it's a bit light, but I mean, it is what it is at this point. He's got to serve it. You got to just hope that it's enough at this point. And honestly, if this doesn't work, what does? Like, do you give him a third chance? Like, and like you said, like, I don't know what he did down in Florida. I didn't know they had a Hold a Gun Dumb Anonymous, but I guess they do. So whatever he didn't learn there, I'm hoping he learns in this sabbatical, and we can get the Ja Morant that we all fell in love with, that high flying, Vince Carter-esque type of player. I'm hoping we get it back, but at this point, I don't have full faith in it. But again, I want it to happen.
Right. So we wait for Indiana. They'll make their second pick of this first round. They drafted Coulibaly with the 7th overall pick. They traded him to Indiana for Jarris Walker. So Jarris Walker is now an Indiana Pacer. Here's Adam Silver. Ben Shepherd, the forward out of Belmont University, will be the pick for Indiana at number 26 overall. And again, Indiana, kind of one of those teams where full rebuild mode, And in the words of Vance Johnson, not a reboot. We're back. And so that's where Indiana is. They're going to be at the bottom of the Eastern Conference, at least in my opinion, for years to come. And like you said, for a couple of these teams, maybe for Houston, if you wouldn't be surprised at a quick turnaround. I would be surprised if Indiana had a quick turnaround. At least within. I do not see them even sniffing the playoffs for at least 4 seasons.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a bit of a grind for Indiana fans. Please be ready to embrace the suck, because you're going to deal with a lot of it. But they're another one of those teams that have a ton of capital, and if they just hit on them right, they can take that trajectory, and they can even maybe skip a couple of steps if they hit on enough properly. But again, these are lottery picks. You never know. You got to kind of wait and see with them. But I like the trajectory that Indiana could be on with what kind of a core they have now, and then what they can build around it with all of these pieces that they've amassed.
Yeah, we now await the second pick of the first round for the Charlotte Hornets. We touched on them. They had the 2nd overall pick, decided to go with Brandon Miller, the forward out of Alabama, over Scoot Henderson, who a lot of people's mocks, a lot of people's draft boards had Scoot at the number 2 position for Charlotte. We kind of touched on this being just around a week after Michael Jordan sells his majority share after a 13-year run. Didn't get out of the first round of the playoffs ever in Michael Jordan's tenure in Charlotte. So maybe a shakeup of culture, getting some new pieces in there for Charlotte. You know, they've had some good key players in that organization over the years, just could not ever get over the hump. And so, you know, I saw somewhere too, Daniel, that Scoot Henderson was almost a lock for the Hornets since Emeka Okafor. Think about that, for a lock. When they selected him number 1 overall, I forgot what even draft that was. I want to say like 2004-ish, maybe somewhere around that. I don't even know if
when I graduated high school. Yep.
Yeah. So it was a long time since they were locked into a pick, and they decided to go, nope, we're going to make a U-turn and go a completely different direction.
Right. Yeah, definitely. This is a place I see them adding some more size. Maybe a Greg Jackson or Leonard Miller. I think is where they go. And here comes Silver.
Just missed it, but they picked Nick Smith Jr., a guard out of Arkansas. So the second Razorback to be selected here in this first round of the NBA draft. Scott Hastings would be proud. So we have only three picks. We only have 3 picks left. The Jazz will get their third selection in this NBA draft here in the first round, and then it'll be the Denver Nuggets and then the LA Clippers will round out the draft at number 30. This is how much the Nuggets don't get recognized. They still have
Indiana as 29.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I was just looking at that. I'm like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. So that's not even winning a championship will get you noticed, apparently.
But supposedly that was the whole thing, right? Wasn't that every pundit's thing? Like even Nick Wright came out afterwards and tried to whitewash his history, talking about some of us needed to see it, but yet you see it and you still get the disrespect.
Still don't
Man.
care. Right? Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. So
you need to remember where the Larry O'Brien is.
Yeah, it's in Titletown, USA, by the way, the new name in Denver. So Utah is now on the clock. They'll have 4.5 minutes, just around 4.5 minutes to be picked. Going back to Nick Smith, he missed 19 games last season, Daniel, with a right knee issue. So, anybody that's dealing with knee issues, back issues in the draft, and that's why a lot of people passed on Michael Porter Jr. The Nuggets took a chance on him. A few years later, ended up being a pretty good pick, gets a max contract, helps the Nuggets win a championship. So, things can turn around. But at least in my experience, Daniel, knees and backs do not get better with age. So,
no. And it's that dirty word. It was knee management.
Management
which means that it's something that can't just be fixed. You can't just go under the knife and get it fixed. If you're managing something, that sounds like Kawhi Leonard, the man that started load management. That is a dirty word for every front office in the NBA. If it's not, then you're not doing your job.
Right.
If you got to manage your rookie because he has some injury issues, that is definitely going to be why you fall all the way to the end of the first round, despite having the talent that the kid had. Yeah, there's got to be something on the medicals that scared teams for him to fall this far.
Yeah, and like you said, injuries, and maybe 19 games of a college season is a pretty good amount to miss, especially during a college season. That's a lot for a college player. But you're taking a chance on a guy, like you said, management. You hate, like you said, dirty word, just disgusting word when it comes to sports. This is the first time I've ever seen right knee management. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, not from a draft prospect. Like I said, I've seen it from guys like Kawhi Leonard and that have been in the league for a while, but to come out of college needing management on an injury, that's a major, major red flag. But I guess also if you're going to pick him at the end of the first round, if you only get a couple of years out of him at the peak, I mean, hey, did you not can that not be considered hitting on a late first round pick in the NBA?
I mean, yeah. I mean, if he turns out to have a very good career. I mean, again, I steal is such another dirty word. Steals of draft, steals and trades. I don't necessarily know if it'd be a steal if he turns out to have a 13 to 15 year career where he averages 20 points. I mean, that's a pretty good draft pick if he turns out to have that and those knee issues kind of went away. Or by that time you're inserting bionic knees into players, so that you're running around like RoboCop. That'd be cool, but I don't think that's in the cards, at least anytime soon. So, yeah, definitely drafting guys with injuries. That's here's Adam Silver. I kind of liked how Adam Silver said the Ohio State University. That was pretty cool. But Brian Sensabaugh is your number 28th overall pick Ford out of Ohio State. And, we've harped on Utah a lot because this is their third pick already in the first round. We touched on chemistry, we touched on dirty words, and we've touched on stockpiling. And that's what Utah has done, the last couple of seasons. They got a haul back of draft picks for the Gobert trade. So that was how they got a lot of these picks, for Mike Conley, Rudy Gobert and company. So that's, and even that trade that sent Vanderbilt to Minnesota, back when I think it was with that 3-team trade with the Lakers and Minnesota and Utah, that was part of that as well. So they got picks from the Lakers during that time as well. So they're just biding their time. And I don't want to say that the NBA is a better place when Utah is good. And we mentioned it, I think it was Utah's second pick. I don't think we've ever uttered the words Utah is rebuilding. Will Jordan Clarkson be a part of this roster when the season starts? But here we are with 3 picks in the first round. And like I said, you're going to have a good, organizational kind of, where you're sitting financially with a lot of these rookie contracts.
Yeah, exactly. And to go counter to one of your points is that Utah could fall off the map and it wouldn't hurt me any, but that's my own personal opinion there. But yeah, it's just like you said, it's just stockpiling, biding your time. Maybe they paid attention and they're going to go the Denver Nuggets route, or maybe they package a bunch of these guys and go out and do the reverse of what they just did and go spend all these assets on a couple of big name guys and maybe pull them into Utah. I think it's just you got to stick with the rebuild. If you want to build a consistent contender, you must build it from the ground up. You want to build a quick contender with a very small contending window, you can definitely do it through free agency. But if you want it long term, you want to keep that window open as long as possible and milk it for everything it's got, you got to build it from the ground up. And if Utah is able to do that, we might end up with a rivalry with them again. As of right now, it looks like it's going to be one-sided for a while they amass all these picks and pick up all these rookies. But we'll have to wait and see if maybe they're able to skip a couple steps like Cleveland was and get back to contention before anybody thought. But again, it's just going to be back to stacking them draft classes back to back. You can't just have one good draft class. You got to have multiples and you got to stack them. As long as you can do that, you can have success in the league. If you don't, then you end up with the mess that the Utah is right now.
Right. And maybe they would argue they're not in a mess because they put themselves in the position to have all these draft picks, maybe. And I'm assuming, Daniel, as we only have 2 picks left here, I'm assuming they still have Indiana at number 29 because maybe Adam Silver's going to go up there and announce the trade because it was just yesterday. Of course, I'm giving everyone the benefit
lot
of
the leeway, my guy.
Yeah, I'm giving everyone the benefit of the doubt, but that's my guess as to why they still have Indiana up there with the number 29 pick.
You're better than me. I'm saying that they're doing it out of spite because of how much Mile High Basketball and Nugget Nation drugged them for the last couple of weeks. I say it's a spiteful thing, and it's either that or they're incompetent. I'm willing to go either way, but I'm not nearly as nice a guy as you are.
So I mean that's what I'm assuming. And again, obviously I'm not speaking for everybody, but that's what I'm going to go with. So maybe see they are showing Nuggets highlights now. With it says the pick is in, or now it says proposed trade. Like how would this trade happen yesterday?
Oh my goodness. Yes.
Crazy.
What is going on, ESPN? I thought you were the worldwide leader in sports.
No, it stands for Eastern Time Zone only.
Yes.
So here comes Adam Silver. Let's see what he has to say.
Oh my goodness. Oh, the Nuggets logo is right there.
So apparently not. Apparently I was just wrong. Even I don't know who the host is, one of the ladies from ESPN but he still said the Indiana Pacers, and then she said that's where this pick is going. Once again, Julian Strother, who I'm assuming is coming to the Denver Nuggets. He was the 22-23 All WCC first team for the Gonzaga Bulldogs. So I'm assuming the Nuggets are getting this forward out of Gonzaga, or are we still? Are they
saying anything on the what is going on?
So the alert I just got from ESPN was proposed trade, and Bleacher Report just came out and said Nuggets draft Gonzaga forward.
What is I am so confused here right now.
Yeah, why does it say proposed trade? Is it not official? Yeah,
dude, ESPN. I'm sorry, I'm done. I can't do that anymore.
So I guess I should change it to Pacers. Maybe
they're talking about. They're literally talking about it on the broadcast as he's a Nuggets.
All right. Well, I'm gonna be even nicer and say that he's going to announce it when he announces the Clippers pick, the last pick of the draft. That's my guess. Now, my first guess was wrong. Maybe I'll go 1 for 2.
See, this is why I'm skeptical. People say I'm mean. I'm just skeptical, and I read the tea leaves. This is, oh my goodness.
So
I have no idea what just happened there. Yeah,
I'm just gonna go ahead and assume. And again, it sucks to assume because it makes ass out of you and me. But I'm assuming now that he's a Nugget. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Proposed trade. I'm a little confused on that because it was yesterday. So my last shred of benefit of the doubt is going to be Adam Silver announcing this trade when he goes up to announce the Clippers pick. That's gonna be where I'm at.
I got you. Yeah, and I'm just looking through socials to see if everybody's just saying, "Oh, the Denver Nuggets are selecting. The Denver Nuggets are selecting. The Denver." Like nobody else is mentioning Indiana. That is why I am saying ESPN is just being spiteful. I'm sorry. I'm just doubling down on that. I can't see any other explanation. I know you're being the nice guy, and I'm all for it, but I can't co-sign that. That's insane. But anyways, this is a 6'7", 200-pound guard coming to Denver is our assumption again. So they're adding more size and athleticism out on the wing, just adding, more kindle to the bonfire that is the Denver Nuggets raging contender window. I like the pick. I mean, 15 points, 40% from 3, 46% from the field, almost over 6 rebounds a game. Even averaged almost half a block a game and 1 steal a game. So it looks like another 3-and-D wing that gets to be out there with Christian Braun and Bruce Brown, hopefully Bruce Brown, which I do believe he will be coming back. I know you mentioned that earlier that, it's kind of a limo, but I personally believe, my opinion, I don't have any inside knowledge. I just believe Bruce is going to come back at the maximum. They can sign him at about $7.5 million. And then next season, he'll sign his early bird rights for around $15 million a year, which makes his entire tenure at about $12 million, which is what other teams can offer him in free agency. I like the pick. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned stockpile. The Nuggets are even trying to stockpile these rookie contracts, these cheap contracts to try to keep around, to try to bring back Bruce because, DeAndre Jordan, Ish Smith, guys like that are not going to be on this roster next season. So who's going to kind of fulfill that veteran void? Is Jeff Green going to hang around? I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Green even came out tomorrow and said, I'm retiring after 16 seasons and almost playing on half the teams in the league, like Ish Smith. Third, by the way, that's so crazy. 13 teams in 13 years is just absolutely nuts.
That's so crazy.
So who's going to be that veteran that they might need to bring on for, a veteran, whatever, Chanchar's still on his rookie deal. Obviously, Peyton Watson's still on his rookie deal. Christian Brown's still on his rookie deal. So you still have 3 or 4 rookie contracts that you're able to maneuver around. And, Bruce is obviously your number one priority at this point. This draft is not even your number one priority. You need to somehow, all intents and purposes, I don't know, you're not going to, Kelvin Booth's not going to go the route of the Phoenix Suns and pay a luxury tap like luxury tax like Matt Ishbia, who needs to be throat punched again. But I don't think that he's going to go that route. I mean, I'm sure the Cronkies would be like, hey, just do what you got to do. But I don't see them going that route to, give Bruce what a Washington or a Detroit or whoever is going to give him, upwards of between $15 and $20 million. So that's their first priority. Not even this draft was priority. These trades even weren't priority. And like you, I agree. I don't think even champagne influenced or not for Bruce to go up on the stage and be like, one more year. And then even before they won the championship, he said money's not the issue. I love it here. I fit in well here. I do believe he's coming back. Here's Adam Silver. Well, he missed it, but it was Kobe Brown, forward out of Missouri, with the final pick. And I did not hear him say that the Nuggets trade went down. So who knows?
Never. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with there, man. Just like, again, with the team needs for the LA Clippers, one of the team needs was health. Like, what are we even doing here?
That is, I will defend him on that one because let's face it, when you have Paul George and Kawhi Leonard on your team, you need bodies.
Well, no,
so anyone,
correct.
Yeah. So anyone with a pulse at this point is health for the Clippers.
Right. No, I'm 100% with you. The best ability is availability. Like, it's a trope, it's a cliche, but it's one for a reason.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know, man. Getting back to Kobe, I'm just gonna get off of that. Kobe Brown, forward, Missouri. Another guy with some size, some scoring ability. Hit 55% from the field. If he could stay healthy, I guess that's what they drafted him for, was health, because they need it, apparently, according to ESPN. I think he adds another bit of defense to their bench. And it's a nice little depth piece there for the Clippers going forward.
Yeah, and again, anyone with a pulse is good enough for the Clippers at this point. You brought in Kawhi Leonard and Paul George hoping to be in a good playoff position, and they actually were. Again, I kind of compare them to the Brooklyn Knicks. Maybe KD and Kyrie got Brooklyn to where they were before they were traded, kind of like Kyrie and Paul George got the Clippers to where they were before they both got hurt and got knocked out of the playoffs. Do you feel bad at all for these two guys, especially Kawhi Leonard? Do you feel bad that, and again, injuries 99% of the time aren't anybody's fault, aren't the player's fault, aren't anybody's fault, especially in basketball where it's a non-contact sport. You can, go up for a layup or a dunk or a rebound and come down and land on somebody's foot and completely F up everything. I mean, that you could end your career by falling on somebody's foot. That's just how plain and simple it is. But do you feel bad for Kawhi Leonard at this point in his career?
No, this is what he wanted. He could have stayed in Toronto. They had the ability to offer him more money than LA could because of him already being there. So no, I don't feel bad for somebody having to lie in the bed that they made. He personally picked PG-13, weirdest nickname I've ever heard somebody give themselves, but I digress. But yeah, he has literally been given every single thing he asked for. So again, you made the bed, you lie in it, and you don't get to complain about it. And I don't feel bad for you one iota. You could have stayed in Toronto and kept that championship window open. They'd have kept that team together for you. Like there's the only reason that you're in the situation that you're in, Kawhi, is because of what you did to yourself. So I have no sympathy.
Well, and I guess I meant, do you feel bad for him that he can't stay healthy at this point?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I feel bad for anybody that has talent in something and can't perform it for something that is out of their control. There's nothing worse in this world, especially like for a guy like me that's a bit of a control freak. If something happens to me that's out of my control, that hurts so much worse than something I can't control because I could have done something. But yeah, if it's something that's out of their control, definitely. I feel bad for the guy, and I wish that he could play a lot more because I love him as a player. I love his game, and I think he's another one of those players that the league is better when he's in it. There's just something about that cyborg personality he has and that robotic laugh that is just infectious, and you want to see the guy win. It was great to see him get his ring, and it definitely is terrible to see him having to deal with the injuries. on that
Right.
tip, I do feel sympathy.
Yeah, and I've always felt bad for a guy like Derrick Rose as well, who somehow miraculously still playing in the league, and you know the standing ovations that he got in the limited minutes coming off the bench for the Knicks was cool to see. Again, not sure if you know my sports backstory, Daniel. My whole family's from Chicago, so I also follow Chicago teams. Breaking up before kind of it was able to mature and I guess nourish was the backcourt of Derrick Rose and Jimmy Butler, and ironically enough, Tom Thibodeau was the head coach during that time, who is now Derrick Rose's head coach in New York, kind of coming full circle. And then Miami goes into New York and beats them in the playoffs. So kind of a full circle of life there. But I always felt bad for Derrick Rose. I'm glad to see him still hanging on to a team. I don't know if it's by the skin of his teeth, or I don't know if he's just I don't want to see him be Udonis Haslem. Obviously, Derrick Rose has bounced around a few teams, but I don't want to see him just wasting a roster spot for someone who can come in and make an impact on a team. So I guess that's where I stand. I've always felt bad for Derrick Rose, coming off an MVP season, and Bulls were primed and ready to go those years. And they, after his injury, that's when they kind of just shipped everyone off. They shipped off Jimmy Butler, they shipped off Carlos Boozer, they shipped off Joakim Noah. Just kind of faded away. He didn't really go to another team, but he just kind of fell off the face of the earth, which was kind of weird. But that's where
it really was.
Yeah,
so good to just dog water.
Yeah,
it was bad.
It was that whole time was hard to watch as a Bulls fan. But that's going to wrap up the 2023 draft once again, and maybe expected Victor Wembanyama goes number 1 to the San Antonio Spurs. Scoot Henderson, shockingly, maybe surprisingly, falls to number 3 as Portland takes him, and the Denver Nuggets / Indiana Pacers select Julian Strawther out of Gonzaga. We're not sure what team he's on yet, but that's where. And the last pick of the first round was Kobe Brown, the guard / forward out of Mizzou. So little Michael Porter Jr. tie right there as well. Daniel, what are your final thoughts on the draft besides ESPN being a bunch of idiots? I think that's well established from both of our points of view during the Nuggets playoff run. But what any surprises that you were kind of like, whoa, that was kind of weird, or maybe some non-happenings? Maybe Dame not getting traded, Zion not getting traded. What was your overall impression?
Yeah, the fact that Dame and Zion didn't swap area codes and time zones was the biggest surprise to me. I really thought at least one, but I really thought both were going to be moved, if not for each other. So that was the biggest non-happening. The biggest storyline for me, again, is Whitmore falling all the way to 20. I think he's going to be that steal, that guy that falls, has a chip on the shoulder, and just comes out the gate just balling. I think that kid's gonna do some things in this league, and that chip on the shoulder is going to go a long way to making that happen.
Yeah, I think one of the maybe multiple surprises / shocks was the 2 non-trades, like you mentioned, Dame and Zion. Not really much Zion, because I don't think I think a lot of teams view him as damaged goods at this point. But Dame not getting traded, that was kind of a big one. I thought maybe Portland would package that number 3, maybe not the number 3 pick, but maybe package that number 23 pick to Miami, and maybe Portland would get back Miami's number 18 pick. That seemed kind of like a balanced trade. Like we mentioned, Kyle Lowry, probably, maybe a year or 2 left, if that. So I thought Dame would maybe be packaged. I think this is my little conspiracy theory that I literally just thought up. I think if Charlotte would have picked Scoot at number 2, I think maybe you would have saw a trade for that number 3. Maybe. That's kind of where my head is at. But since Scoot fell to them at number 3, they were just let's just kind of let this play out a little bit.
I think you might be onto something there.
So we'll see. That's where kind of that was kind of just my initial thoughts right there. Other than that, kind of straightforward. The streak of, what was it? Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 guards in a row was kind of telling. that nobody cares if the Nuggets win again. So that's,
Right.
Unless they're just going to, unless they're just going to throw out these rookie guards to try to guard Jamal for full court, which we saw him, still take people to the cleaner. So, especially Landry Shamet. So we'll see. We'll see what happens with these players. Obviously, it's a crapshoot at this point. Victor Wembanyama has gotten all the hype, so we'll see if he lives up to the hype. And yeah, that's a wrap for the first round. Second round coming your way tomorrow. Not sure if we'll or it's actually started right now, by the way. The first pick in the second round was James Nagy, center out of Barcelona, 6'11", 226 for Detroit. So that's where they are. Nuggets have number 40, so they'll have a pick in 9. But we're going to wrap things up after this first round. We will post the Nuggets pick at number 40, or maybe the Pacers pick. Who knows who pick it'll be by the time we
have 32 and 40, because this is supposed to be their pick too.
Yeah, see, it's Indiana. They just love Indiana.
Pickett, guard out of Penn State.
There you go. 6'2", 209 guard out of Penn State. So we'll see. We'll see if things get cleared up. Who knows? Maybe Daniel's right in that they just can't. They still just can't get their act together. But that's going to do it for us for us on our Elevation 5280 Sports and Lifestyles coverage of the first round of the NBA draft. And Daniel, it was finally cool to get to do a show with you. It only took us almost 3.5 hours, but we got it done, and I feel much better for it.
Most definitely. I had a pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right. Once again, follow Daniel on the Twitterverse at you can see his handle right there, and follow us on the socials as well, like a Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. All of it is right there. Go check out the website at e5280sports.com. A lot of good content up there as well. But for Daniel, I am Michael Spill. We will talk to you soon.